Hello, and welcome to the pre-show for the Final Fantasy Series Relay number 8 in 2023. This is the pre-show for the main event. The main event is going to be starting on Friday, the 25th, so later this week, in 5 days' time. And this year we have 19 games. I think there's more than we've ever had before. So 57 runners with 3 teams, 19 runners per team. This is a relay race, so those aren't familiar with a relay race, we have basically when one game finishes, the next one starts. So a little bit different from your typical speedrun marathon that you might have seen in the past. In this case, it's a race from start to finish for around 72-ish hours, we're kind of projecting. Today with me, we have Chris, if you want to introduce yourself.
Hello there, I'm Local Man, and I'll be hosting most of this.
Yeah, so this is the pre-show. So today we're going to be going through announcing all of the teams. Right now, the runners know who they are, who are running each game, but they don't know what team they're on. The teams are sort of carefully balanced to try and create an interesting race. And so they're going to find out what team they're on today, and then we're going to talk about the games a little bit, so you can figure out what to look forward to in each game. What are some of the highlights, some of the difficult parts, some of the interesting skips or glitches or tech or whatever have you on each game. We're going to find out. So we're going to bring on someone for each game, and Chris is just going to talk to them for a bit. That should be pretty fun, I think.
Hopefully so.
So, sorry. Before we get started, I just want to give some thanks to a few people. I want to thank the RPG LB staff for letting us use their channel once again, as well as all the mod work that's going to be done in the chat, not just for the stream, which is probably quite quiet, but for also the main stream in particular, which can get quite noisy in the chat. So thanks for that. I want to thank all the runners that have signed up, as well as those that signed up and didn't get to play. This year we had 138 signups, which is quite a lot, and 57 runners, so more than half don't get to play, unfortunately. But they do, they sign up. A lot of people learn runs specifically for the relay, which is quite a lot of dedication, and a lot of runners put in a lot of practice for the relay, but then sometimes ultimately don't get to run, which is a shame. But yeah, we just want to say thanks for that anyway. Thankfully, a lot of these people do get to commentate still, so thanks to the commentary. Each game is going to have a unique commentary team. The runners in this event don't tend to do any commentary, so thanks to dedicated commentary on each game. And with all of that, there's over 100 people involved in this, which is pretty cool. This year we have 2 completely new games as part of the 19. So we have Tactics Advanced is going to be in the showcase, which is really cool, and the new Crisis Core Reunion is going to be in the event as well. So we'll find out more about those as they come up in this pre-show. Is there any game you're looking forward to, Chris?
Is there any game I'm looking forward to? It would be hard not to say 10, wouldn't it? It would be really hard not to say 10. Besides that, I guess Tactics Advance. I've only ever played it casually. I've never speedrun it. But I've seen a few people speedrun it in the run-up to this event. And it's just a game I really enjoy and low-key love quite a lot. So I'm pretty excited for that one.
I think that should be pretty good, yeah. I mean, there's a bit of a grind at the start, but after that, for sure, I think it's going to be pretty interesting to see. I think it's a really, colorful and, characteristic game. We haven't had the regular tactics for a while in the event, just because there's typically not enough people running it to be able to include it. But we've got Tactics Advanced, and that's even more cool, I think, just because we haven't done it before. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that too. Another sort of new one this year is we've got FF1 on NES for the first time. We've wanted this since the very first relay, so we finally get to show FF1 on NES, which I'm kind of looking forward to as well. This should be a lot of fun, I think.
Let me tell you, he's not in call, but Maelstrom has been very excited for FF1 to be shown and ran during the relay.
It's gonna be good. I'm looking forward to it. That is towards the end of it. That's going to be on Monday, so you can hold on quite a while if you want to watch that one. But yeah, cool. I think that's about it for introductions. I think we're about ready to start talking about the first game. If you want to introduce the first person, and I'll head out.
Okay, fantastic. Well, for you Seraph enjoyers, I'm sorry, You're not going to get to hear him for a while. You get to hear my even more English tones from now on. We're going to start with our first game, which is Final Fantasy 15. And our first set of teams. So, we have Matty Iceman on Choco, Barbatos on Mog, sorry. It's not a good thing when you get the first one wrong. Barbatos on Choco, and to round it out, Kios on Team Tonberry, who should be joining me shortly, or should be here. There we go. Here they are. Hello, Kios.
Mr. Casual Tenarium, how are you today?
I am very well, actually. I'm very well. It just feels like now that the pre-show started, the relay's starting, you know? Like, it's happening, it's real, it's here.
Yeah, it is.
I'm excited for it. Is there any team you particularly wanted to be on? Are you happy with being on Tonberry?
It's a two-part answer to this one. So I would definitely love to shift Tonberry to Cactuar, or to be placed on Team Nikki.
Oh, Team Nikki.
Yeah,
Okay.
Team Nikki always wins.
Okay. I think someone else being on Team Nikki probably defeats the purpose of Team Nikki.
I could also become Nikki. It's like only $75 to change my name here, I think.
I'll take your word for it on that one then. Maybe one day we'll implement the Team Cactuar idea. I think we've had many ideas for many different mascots over the course of this.
It just matches my tattoos better. That's all.
Anyway, you're here to talk about Final Fantasy 15. I think when most people think of Final Fantasy 15 speedrunning, it would be fair to say that you would be first to come on mind. Can you tell me, like, I think we were chatting before about the key changes between, like, the original release and then the Royal Edition that came out afterwards, which is what we'll be running?
Yeah, so the original release of 15, like day one, I believe it's been patched roughly 28 times. They also made some changes to the initial chapter 10, because at first it was a bit confusing for people. They've also, with Royal Edition, added the Return to Insomnia, which used to be just you'd basically start in a tunnel, you'd go outside, three boss rushes, game's over. They've made the entire area of Insomnia explorable. There's a bunch of other side quests and infiltration missions, and you also get to fight 3 of your ancestors in a row.
As you do. So how much has it opened up then? Like, is it a sprawling world? Is it a middling sized like place now? Because I think I did play the original back in whenever it came out on PS4, and I do remember this very short boss rush, and okay, we done now. Like, how much bigger is it now?
It adds an area that's probably roughly about the size of Altitia. Like, it's its own separate zone, realistically. So, Chapter 9, the basically anime Venice. So it's a fairly decent size given like map standards in Final Fantasy 15.
Okay, so yeah, where at it is pretty sizable then.
Yeah, it is. It's pretty neat. It definitely adds a lot more playability to the game. Gives you a super boss, and like I said, there's a couple of extra pretty cool infiltration missions and challenges that makes it pretty cool.
That's very cool. Are there any potential glitches that arise from all of this new stuff being added, or through the new edition?
The any percent version of the game, we just the glitches run for most of us should take right around like 4.25 to 4.5 hours. The any percent version of the run is under an hour at this point with a decent PC. It removes pretty much the entire game. which is interesting because when they did add sending you back to Insomnia, they basically use what most people do in video games, just a standard like warp location. Like, hey, we registered that you finished this part of the game. We've put a loading trigger out in the middle of the world, and once you hit that, we'll teleport you back. Well, if you can get out there and hit that and wrong warp, there's that. There's a couple of interesting things with the way Cerberus, one of the final like boss rush fights, happens. That if you interact with them at a certain point in one of their moves, you can launch them out of bounds, and then the game just kind of shrugs at you for a bit. Yeah, it's pretty interesting. There's a lot of strange things that can happen, but it's kind of up to the runners to avoid it, because unfortunately like 99% of the glitches that we do encounter aren't actually beneficial, so it actually is better to avoid them.
Okay, so how like straightforward then as a result is the 15 run, if you're talking about, you know, like don't yeet this boss out of bounds? Like, is it all honestly, like that, or
it's always been pretty straightforward. I'm trying to like honestly the only like skip within the run, there's only like 2 or 3 of them realistically. Like there's a couple of like dialogue skips, but like that's kind of is what it is. In chapter 3, I don't know, I personally don't do it because it's too risky for me. You can actually skip a shimmy point in a cave, which saves like 20 seconds. Chapter 10 in its entirety we skip due to a kind of an object error where when they were redoing the level and restructuring it to make it, I guess, more understandable for people, they left an interactable object, a giant drill that goes into this mining area, but they left collision on it, and not so much collision, they didn't put invisible walls on it, so we just climb this drill and jump into a giant hole and skip the entire puzzle and just end up in a boss fight. But otherwise it's honestly pretty straightforward. It's a lot of min-maxing in terms of damage output, abusing the magic system. It is definitely a fun watch, though. We try and keep it as entertaining as possible.
Yeah, that's good to hear. But can I ask one cheeky question at the end? I think I've ever asked this of you, and I've kind of always wanted to know. What got you into running 15? Like, why 15? Because you used to run 12, right?
Yes.
What made you come to 15? Because you've been on 15 for a very long time now. What drew you to, like, 15?
It was just enjoyable, and unlike 12, I was actually fairly decent at it.
Yeah.
The other thing is, like, in terms of like the way like my real life has been structured, it's much more, it kind of just fits time slot wise better with like when I can stream and when I can sit down and focus on it. Like 12 is a 7-hour kind of thing. Like you're gonna have to have a snack in the middle of it, and like, oh, you don't really get any bathroom breaks either, so good luck. And 15 was just kind of like it's right at the lengths of like how long can I maintain my focus and just be uninterrupted and not have to get up and do anything.
All right, well, that's good. Yeah.
Surprisingly logical from me, right?
Yeah, no, I do like the answer of I was better at it, and 12 is quite hard.
12's brutal.
12
like,
is you need to be some kind of wizard to run 12. I don't know how people do that. It is insane.
I would love to go back to it. It's just one of those things, like, kind of like with Nier Automata, like I would just really need to forget everything I know about that game and then just come back to it entirely fresh. But like with a game of that size, you're putting a year down until you're anywhere near where you used to be.
Yeah, 12 is insane like that. Well, anyway, thank you for your time.
Yeah.
But last year, when I was doing these, just before I kicked people out and we moved on, I asked them what their favourite Final Fantasy was. and we found out that the best, unarguable, objective best Final Fantasy is Final Fantasy X. This year, I will be asking, which Final Fantasy has the best soundtrack? You've got 5 seconds to answer, and then I'm going to yeet you out the channel. Go.
All right, it's either 15 or 13. Shout out to Yoko Shimomura.
15 or 13? Okay. I'm kind of tempted to take the first answer, but I guess I can put in a vote for each one, and then if everyone doesn't start giving multiple answers, then we can just, say it's a one-off and let both pass. Alright. So, next on the list, we have Final Fantasy IX. And the teams are Easley is on Mog, Pete Swanson is on Choco, and here with me, Keeper BK on Team Tonbury. Keeper, how are you doing?
Hello, Chris. I got my wish. I can use Grim Salad's Tonberry emote, so I'm doing very, very well indeed.
There really was a request for a lot of runners who wanted to be on Tonbury. Every time I spoke to someone about it privately or like in Twitch chat, I'd be like, is there any team you really want to be on? Everyone said Tonbury. You know who wanted to be...
me too.
You know who wanted to be on Tonbury last year when they didn't have a win yet? Nobody did. Everyone wants to be on Tonbury now that they've got a win. Everyone.
I don't mind being a front runner. I'm a Man City supporter, Chris, so that's fine.
I'm sure a reference that maybe 3 or 4 people may understand.
I'm making sure, we're catering to a wide audience here, obviously.
Yeah, the way it is. All right, brilliant. So, 9 this year. First time ever, we're doing the PC version of Final Fantasy IX. It has popped off last year. So many people just running 9 PC. It's brilliant. We've only ever done PSX up until now. What are the differences between PC and PS1 FF9?
Yeah, there's a lot to say. I'll try to keep it concise. It's a slightly shorter run. On average, it's going to be about an hour to an hour and a half shorter, especially in a relay setting where we're going to be using survival strats. I'd actually say it's going to be closer to an hour and a half faster than PlayStation runs, and there's 2 reasons for that. One is we do skip all the cutscenes in the PC version, so whenever we hit an FMV, we can just select to skip that FMV. The second, and maybe even the more important reason, is the random encounter rate is extraordinarily lower in the PC version. It's not entirely clear to me whether that's by design from Square or whether it's a glitch, but whereas in an average run on PSX, you'll get about 60 or so random encounters, on an average run on PC, we'll get about 12 to 15 random encounters. So, for example, the IFA tree, which sort of notoriously can destroy runs on PSX when you get 10 or more encounters, something crazy like that, we will frequently get 0 random encounters running through that area. So that's one major difference, is it's a shorter run, and there's more to say. I guess I would just add as well, it's a safer run in the sense that the PC route allows us to use continue checks. So if one of the runners does unfortunately die to a boss, for example, we can just hit continue and go on and try the fight again. So you'll see fewer kind of safety saves throughout the run versus a console run. And the last thing I would say is that the battle mechanics on PC are actually slightly different in a way that makes the PC battles, I would argue, more difficult, in the sense that when you switch between character menus, so for example, if you have 2 party members that have full ATB and you want to switch from one to the other, enemy ATB pauses in the console version when you make that switch, giving you time to sort of set up and sequence your order of inputs. But on PC, the enemy ATB does not pause when you switch, so you kind of need to be very careful about trying to sequence things and be too cute with your strategies, because the enemies can sneak in extra turns. So for that reason, I would say the battles can be a little bit trickier at times.
Okay, and obviously you mentioned the encounter rate. This is still FF9 though. At the end of that, like, you can get... I think there was someone on release who got 2 encounters for the entire run. but a run I did the other day of FF9, 21 encounters. It is still like incredibly varying. It's still FF9, right? Like it's more consistent, but at the end of the day, FF9's gonna be FF9, right?
That's true. That's true. 9 is legendary for its RNG, so certainly you can have a 5 to 10 minute swing in any given run, even on PC, just based on random encounters. And of course, there's a ton of RNG in the actual battles as well.
Exactly. So speaking of battles, are there like any differences between the PSX and the PC route?
There are. That's a great question. It's partially a function of what we just discussed, the lower random encounters. Because we get fewer encounters, of course, on average, we kill fewer enemies. So as a result, we are on average at a lower level for many of the boss fights. What this means is that we don't count on random encounters except for 1 or 2 exceptions where we will force a random encounter, one at the very beginning of the run in Evil Forest and one early on Disc 3 at the Hildegard section. We don't count on random counters for AP for our party members to learn abilities. So what that means is the route is very much streamlined. You kind of learn fewer abilities. You also are generally at a lower level in most fights as opposed to the console run. So for example, there's the famous You Are Not Alone section. There a couple of those fights are a little more dangerous in the sense that your party members can under damage, giving the enemies extra turns, whereas that generally would not happen on console simply because we are at a lower level. So we are really running a very, very streamlined version of the console route.
Okay, are there any fights in particular that change or become like more awkward as a result?
That's interesting. Yeah, so the one would be like You Are Not Alone. The very first fight, you fight a horse. I think it's Amdusius. And I think on console, they pretty much always win that fight in 2 swings. But for us, we can actually underdamage on both those swings. So the way it's supposed to work is Zidane's supposed to attack it, you move it into phase 2, and then Amaranth throws a weapon, and then you end the fight. But what can happen instead on PC, because we are at a lower level, is Zidane can underdamage, the horse stays alive, things start to go haywire, and then if you want things to go like kind of bonus haywire, Amaranth's throw can also underdamage 1 out of 4 times. It can turn into kind of a nightmare horse fight, notoriously, on the PC run.
Oh, learning that fight when I was trying to do it, absolute nightmare.
I have the low roll from Amaranth memorized. It's 5,418 because I seem to see it so frequently, Chris.
Run a game enough when there aren't like that many damage rolls that can happen, and you will start to become paranoid that the game is out for you with those specific rolls. I swear to God.
I could not agree more.
So, also as a result, like, there are still many dangerous fights in FF9 that are still horrendous in both versions. Would you like to mention like 1 or 2 of those as well?
Yeah, I think I wouldn't call it a run killer, but certainly the fight where we die the most frequently is still Death Guys. I think that's true on both console and PC, and it's simply because as folks will probably know, Death Guys opens automatically with a meteor attack that can do random damage between 50 and 4,950 on each of your 4 party members. If all 4 party members get high rolled, you're kind of just out of luck. I don't know this for sure. I don't want to speak for the other runners. I think all 3 of us will be probably ensuring that we run with the Rebirth Ring, so Zidane will get back up in that scenario. But even then, if Death Guys uses a spin attack or connects with its regular attack, you're just going to have to reset. So there's the meteor I see playing right now. That's, the ability that haunts my dreams. And that's actually a pretty rough roll. We might get out of that one. But yeah, that's probably the fight where we're likeliest to die, is still Death Guys, just like console.
Have you ever had anyone survive ever? Because I know in very rare circumstances, all 4 party members can survive the initial meteor smash. Have you ever had that?
I have had that, I think once. I honestly can't remember if it was during a live run or during a practice session, but I do remember having all 4. This will sound a little nuts, but I kind of disprefer it, Chris, because it's kind of confusing. You almost kind of like freeze up because you're like, I'm not used to having 4 party members here. I don't know what to do. It's kind of the ideal scenario, actually, is just Zidane and Steiner survive with relatively high HP, because then you just immediately fall into the rhythm of the normal fight and you know what to do. It's kind kind of like you're almost hoping in a strange way, or at least I am, for Death Guys to just kind of clear out the muck and get Freya and Amaranth out of there just so we can kind of get into the normal rhythms of the fight. That's kind of my weird take on it.
I'm actually so glad you said that, because I have also had once or twice where everyone survives, and you just sit there like, wait, what? Everyone survive? Hang on, I need to get to the important characters to get their turns off real quick. Switch through everyone. You've already mentioned that you can't, like, there's no ATB pausing between the characters getting everyone. Death Guys gets its turn really, really fast. It's a nightmare.
No, it's a great point. It's actually a tactical problem because, especially including Death Guys, all of the bosses on Disc 4 are extremely fast. So if you have party members sort of in the way of the party members whose abilities you actually want to use, it can become a big problem on Disc 4.
Yeah. All right, well, thank you so much for your time, Keeper. Thank you for coming on and talking about FF9. I don't know how much you heard about the previous one, but I'm asking everyone at the end... Got 5 seconds to answer it. Okay. What's the best Final Fantasy soundtrack?
Yeah, I'm going to go with 7. 7 was my first Final Fantasy and my one true love. I'm maybe biased by that, but I still think 7 holds up the best.
All right, Final Fantasy 7 is his vote. I'll give a fair warning. I'm giving 5 seconds to give an answer. He gave that answer fairly quickly, so I was lenient. But if you pause and don't give an answer within 5 seconds, you will be yeeted out the call. That's my warning. Alright, anyway, next up on the schedule, we have Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. Now, I am genuinely looking forward to so many of these runs. It's a joy to see so many Final Fantasy runs back to back, but man, I'm really looking forward to this ones. Anyway, teams. We have Moonblaze Wolf on Mog, Brainbugged on Choco, and Kyrad on Team Tonbury. And here with me, I have the delightful Brainbugged _. Hello.
Hello, how's it going?
It's going well. How's it going with you?
Yeah, I'm chilling.
Chilling. Okay, nice. Did you want to be on Team Choco? Did you have a preference?
I was hoping to be on Team Morg, so I would get the, bingo with 3, I guess.
No, I respect that. Alright, so, Final Fantasy Tactics Advance. We'll just get into the big question early on, because it's a rather large part of the run. You start a run of Tactics Advance, and you do general story stuff for like 15-20 minutes, something like that.
Yeah.
And then there's a big old grind. Like, what is that for? You know, like, is there any way that could be split up over the course of the run? Why is it there? Why is it so important?
That's a good question, yeah. So the reason why we grind is that after the reroute to her picking grinding, the question was, how much grinding do we need so that March can hit certain damage ranges later on in the game? And it happens to be level 33, but we grind one more level, which is level 34, to be safe. And the reason for that is just to make certain fights very quick, as we will later see in the run. And also, another reason is we get new characters or new party members after the grind, and the level they get is based on the average level of our party. So after the grind, we get really powerful units to get through the game pretty fast.
So this is a trick you could do casually then?
Yes, it is.
So what does it involve? Because like we're watching something on screen right now. How does this grind work?
So this is something, well, there are 2 setups we are doing here. First up, we are killing all of the enemies except one, and we use our warrior to slow down the enemy so that he gets less turns. After that, we kill all our party members, and Another thing is that Chirot came up. I think it was Chirot or KG. I think it was KG. We blind the enemy, and there's something weird happening. The enemy will attack you like 1 or 2 times. He will miss you and then completely give up. Just stand there and just stare you to the ground. And we use that time to grind levels on our character. Every time we use aim, we get 10 experience, and we need 100 for 1 level up.
So, does March, the main character, go on to be an archer then?
Not really. We are grinding a few levels or skill points with March as an archer, so that we get access to the hunter class. So we need 2 abilities learned on archer to get the advanced class. And after that, we switch to thief because it's a little bit faster and we can equip quite stronger abilities and still use the hunter's ability to do range damage. And it scales with the weapon damage, which is quite nice.
All that aiming and he never gets to be an archer.
Yeah.
Immediately gets switched into something else. What a disaster. Okay, so we've gone into how you get so strong, so do real damage. You even get an extra level to be safe. Once you're done with that, what's then important, like in fights? I know, like on the maps in the overworld, a lot of things change. I don't know, like if that's random. Like, what do you do from there on?
So yeah, you could say, you're quite strong. You can one-shot almost every enemies, and that's partially right. But there are certain things we are looking out for. For example, in almost every fight, we start with an opening attack, and see how things evolve after that, and kind of develop our route around that. In most fights, we start with the first enemies or the fastest enemies. Like here, we killed the thief first because it's very fast, and after that, we go for certain, I would say, quotation marks, bad enemies. So like the archer can blind you, it can disable your abilities. We go for illusionists because they have really slow abilities, or alchemists with really bad abilities, for in our case, if you're going fast. So yeah, you go with an opening and see how we can kill enemies fast.
Okay, is there much adapting to what's happening in front of you?
Oh, definitely, yes. Because it's an RPG game and you can miss your attacks, we kind of have to, adapt to missing abilities, especially in the end game where one kill or one shot can kill the boss. And if you miss that attack, you kind of have to sit through all the enemies' turns, see what happens, and then, kind of adapt to whatever the enemy throws at you and see how you can finish the fight without losing too much time.
Okay, so like on adapting and like RNG essentially, are there then any fights that are really like scary? I think beforehand you mentioned the final boss, for example. Like, is there anything like that, like scary?
There are like 2 or 3 fights that are a little bit scary. The most scary one is the final boss, definitely. So there's something called Totema, which is like the summon ability. Every race gets access to 1 summon, and the final boss can use all, or has access to all 5 summons. And if we are unlucky, we will see a really powerful ability, and it can pretty much wipe our party. Also, by that point, we only have like 1 unit who can use items, and if he doesn't get a turn, it can be over pretty fast.
One NPC who can use items. Oh boy. Okay, well, like, what are the likelihood that this happens? Like, is it common? Do you have to be unlucky?
I guess you have to be unlucky, yeah. The boss can use all 5 summons, and 2 of them just deal MP damage. 2 of them are quite weak, I would say, and only 1 of them can really wipe you. And since the boss has more abilities except the Totema summons, it is quite uncommon, but I hope no one will get it.
Okay, how much time do you lose if that happens?
If you lose, you have to go back like 2 other fights. It's a 3-stage fight we have to do here. That the footage we see is the final fight. And if you lose that, you go like 6 minutes back, 7 minutes back, because you have to redo both fights and then go back to the final fight.
Okay. I'm still excited for this game, but also now a little more concerned than I was beforehand.
The good thing is we have a mandatory save before the boss fight, so we cannot start the fight without saving. So if we lose, we just go back to the save and restart the fight. The problem is, we have to run around a little bit because we have to start the fight in certain days because there are law sets which can screw us over a little bit.
What law sets are you looking to avoid? Because in Tactics Advanced, there's on certain days you can't use like certain weapons and abilities. What are you looking to avoid?
Yeah, the further we go into the game, the stricter the laws get, and the more laws we get. And things we are looking out to not have in the fight as Hunt, for example, so that Cheney can use his ultimate ability and March can use his Hunter ability that he learned. Also, we don't want to have knives because that's the main weapon of March. Missiles would be bad. Totema would be bad because that's our summon to clear out some fights. Yeah, we are quite limited to our abilities, so yeah, maybe we have to see a little bit of running around.
Okay, fantastic. I'm still genuinely excited for this. I hope it will be a blast. On that note, thank you for your time. It's time for the question. I think I know your answer. I think that I don't like that giggle as well. I think I know what's coming. All right. Brainbugs. What Final Fantasy has the best soundtrack?
Oh, it's gonna be a big surprise. 10-2.
He said 10-2. Of course he said 10-2. Why? I think anyone who had spent even 5 minutes around Brainbugs could have told you that he was going to say 10-2. All right. I secretly knew that was coming as soon as the words left my mouth. Okay. You know what? That being said, 10-2 actually has a pretty banging soundtrack. You can say that for a lot of Final Fantasies, because it's almost an obligation that like a Final Fantasy has a brilliant soundtrack. But the 10-2 one is pretty good. As long as we don't talk about the intro in 1,000 words. Cool. Anyway, we've moved on to the next game. The joyous Final Fantasy VIII. And the teams are... Sonic is on Mog, Sayo is on Choco, and Zaiden rounds off to be on Team Tonberry. And with us here, I believe that we have one Sonic Glenjamin.
Good morning.
Good morning. How are you doing today?
I am doing great. Had a great night of sleep. Ready to talk about one of the best Final Fantasies.
Oh, that does indeed make one of us. Is there any team that you particularly wanted to be on? Are you happy to be on Mog?
I wanted to be on Team Cactar, not gonna lie.
I'm going to stop answering this question, I swear to God. Alright, so speaking of Final Fantasy VIII, Final Fantasy VIII, speedrun, I'd say fairly well known for limit breaks, exploiting just how powerful they can be. Would you care to go into that for me?
Limit breaks in this game are amazing, and the whole point of it being so amazing for me is one-shotting just about every single boss in the game. And that seems ridiculous, being that, RPG bosses aren't supposed to be one-shotted. So the first time running the game, I was like, wait, this is how every boss fight plays out? This is amazing. It's so satisfying to kill a boss in one go.
Yeah. I think my first run of 8 was very similar, yeah.
Even now, it's still like, I'm like, oh, this is just, I love doing this. This is the best.
So how do you get to the stage where you can just waltz up to many in-game bosses as we're seeing now, boop them over the head, and they're dead? How do you get to that stage?
What we got to do, we're trying to keep our character, mostly Irvine, for most of the run, is going to stay in that yellow health that you can see in the video. That keeps him in critical health. That helps us search for limit breaks. Later in the game, he gets the initiative, so he's always going to have the first turn. Well, almost always. But it helps us to refresh the menu faster. We can search limit breaks. I think for a lot of the runners, we're just listening for the sound of that, like a little ding while we're holding right. And then that way we can kind of skip the menu refreshing one more time. Depending on the part of the game, we're going to attack our own party to get their health down. Sometimes we're going to switch the junctions around to kind of manipulate their health to get them low. Drop them down to like 300 health, and we give them all the HP again, but it doesn't refill their health, just refills their max health. And that puts them right into that critical health that we need for each fight that's coming up.
Yeah, very nice. Are there any bosses like that can't just be one tapped over the head?
The first fight we do with Ifrit is not a one touch. There's a few that are like that where we do have to hit them maybe 3 times. Just depends on the phase of the boss. Norg is one that he kind of gets one touch. He has 2 forms, but they both, in a way, get one touched. But for a majority of the run, it is one touch boss fights. Irvine shotgunning parties, or just APing bosses, demo ammo bosses.
Okay. Do you do ECM?
I do ECM. I started with easy CM. That's what got me starting the run. So Awesome Waves has an amazing beginner guide. And that got me going. And I was stubborn enough to just keep running easy CM until I said, okay, I guess. One of the other runners talked to me on the side and said, you could do ECM. So, I mean, it didn't take much to convince me that I could do it at that point. And switching to ECM is, it's even faster than easy CM, surprisingly.
And are there any bosses that you would do as a result of doing ECM specifically that would result in you not being able to one-tap an enemy?
I'm trying to think. Because with easy CM, it almost guarantees every boss is one-tap, because say we do the...
I think I'm asking you about XATM.
Oh, XATM? Ooh,
yeah.
Don't... Ooh.
That's where I'm trying to lead us.
We don't talk about XATM. No, it's the strategy's being different from doing Zell duel to relying on Squall needing to do at least 2 rough divides in 6 limit breaks. You would think is easy, but there's times where I've had like 5 health. So now my crisis level should be really high, and I get 0 rough divides, and I don't know how. It's just, that's how the game is. So I think XATM, as most runners will say, the first hour of the run is the hardest of the game. And I think a lot of it has to do with that boss. At least for me, it's that boss.
Alright, well, we've touched on it now. Do you want to go into like what ECM is, and then like as a result, I also think that Zidane runs something else?
I think I'm not sure what he runs, if it's Q and Z, but ECM is, we get it's early card mod. So I know with the other routes, they don't fight XATM, they run, but we fight XATM burn a couple minutes to get 50 AP to get card mod. And then throughout the rest of the run, that makes the boss fights slightly quicker. And we catch up time through the next 5 to 6 hours instead of just skipping out on that 2 to 3 minute boss fight. I think QZ gets card mod later, but they also do a summon. They summon Shiva, but in ECM we don't do any summons. We very rarely cast any magics. It's just gonna be all normal attack because we're buffed up with like HP 6 plus 60 plus 40 plus 20. I mean not HP, strength. So normal attacks are gonna do a lot of damage, and then like we said before, we're limit breaking everything. Once we get Irvine, he becomes the star of the show. As a kid, I thought Irvine was pretty lame. I thought his limit break was dumb.
Wow.
Now running the game, I go, oh, okay, I get it now.
Wow, how could you think a cowboy's lame? I can't believe this.
Just
So-
his limit break. I didn't understand it. I was a kid.
Yeah, that's fair. You're a kid. It all happens. But, so, moving on. When a lot of... I think generally in the Final Fantasy speedrunning community, you always know, like, one thing about a certain game, even if you've never heard of it, or even if you've never watched it, sorry. And I think FF8's thing is probably S-Star menu. I would say that's fair. You want to go into, like, what S-Star menu is?
So with the S-Star menu, a lot of people will stay up just for that part. Because we are doing not necessarily a 5-minute menu, but we have, in a way, 5 minutes to kill before we can advance the story in the game. So we do this pretty big menu to set ourselves up for the end game. We optimize our item menu, so when we get a drop later in the castle, we don't have to search to the last page or find where it's at. We're giving our party dummy magics, because again, during the final boss, she can blow away magic that you kind of need in your junction system to do enough damage. We'll try to optimize some other things where we're going to delete abilities from GF, so it's just less scrolling. But this is all happening within 2 minutes, I think, because we have to, in the ECM route, we do 2 fights. Then we also have to do a shop. Then we're going to do all this. And the goal is to be done with your menu, with the timer having at least 15 minutes and 2 seconds on the clock, because we can't board the Lunatic Pandora until the clock is at 15 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So if we can finish before then, other than us just sitting here and twiddling our thumbs for 5 minutes, because that'll be really exciting, we do this big menu, and it's still at this point gets me thinking, like, when I finish it, like, that felt right? Did I miss something?
Yeah.
Even with the amount of runs, even with practicing, I still go, okay, I think I did that right. Is there anybody in chat that can verify that I did it right? Which is always the case, I think, with all the FF8 runs that I've seen and been a part of. We're always asking, hey, did I miss something? Is that right?
The
And
FF8
usually
community is very helpful. Like, there are certain
Oh.
tricks earlier on in the run as well that it's just like, okay, anyway, if anyone in chat can help me do this as well, just to make sure that I haven't got it wrong, that would be great.
Yeah, could somebody please double check my work?
Yeah, yeah, exactly. All right.
But yeah,
well,
that's always a part of the run where everything's kind of nice and cruise control up to that point, but the SR menu's coming and the heart starting to race just a tiny bit more than it was earlier in the run.
yeah. Thank you so much for your time, Sonic.
Yeah, no problem.
Always love hearing about Final Fantasy VIII. Now, the question, you've got 5 seconds to answer. Okay. What Final Fantasy has the best soundtrack?
This is going to be a shocker, but it's FF8.
It's FF8. Congratulations. We have one correct answer, am I right, guys? I don't know. Do I get a vote? Do I get a vote in this? Because if so, I'm probably going to give my answer to 8 as well. It has an incredible soundtrack. It is brilliant. Don't get a vote. Oh, that's a shame. All right, never mind then. We'll move on. We will move on to... next is Final Fantasy V. And for the teams, we have Zik on Mog, Crimson Inferno 9 on Choco, and to round it out, Bidooed on Tonberry, our FF5 team. And with us, I believe, we have the male model himself commentating Final Fantasy V. We have Wody B.
Hello, hello, hello. What's going on, everybody? What's up, local man?
Hello there. How are you doing?
I'm good, I'm good. How are you? Enjoying the pre-show?
Thank you. I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's definitely dawning on me now that the relay is happening and is nigh. So,
That's wild.
getting all of those energies flowing and all of that, it's pretty exciting.
Very exciting. This will be my third relay. Once as a participant, 3 times or twice as commentator.
So, Final Fantasy V. This year we're doing Pixel Remaster.
Yep.
I think for the first time, it's pretty much just been SNES up until now. I believe in Final Fantasy V PR, there are thresholds that I believe certain like boss HPs have. Would you care to go into that for me?
Yes, that is correct. So, and some of this might be present in the SNES, but because the SNES version has step count and things are a little bit more straightforward or like kind of pre-planned out with the step manipulation, we don't really have that in PR, and so we have to take like thresholds into account. So sometimes, like in the video you're seeing right now, this is against the Crystal Guardian fight. I think the clip I gave you is like showing what happens if you go too fast versus like accounting for thresholds. Essentially in this fight, these Guardians do very basic attacks, very simple attacks like at the beginning, but as their HP thresholds get too low, they'll actually trigger high-level spells. So what you see here is an Aqua Breath going off, and that basically nukes your team. Well, what we want to do instead to avoid stuff like that, and you'll see this on a few of the other fights, is we actually wait for all 4 characters to have ATB before we even take one of our actions. So we do have to generally sit through like 4 turns. Luckily, the Guardians are really just going to attack or do like critical attack, but nothing overly dangerous as long as you're kind of full HP. And then once everybody has their ATB, we just do Guild Toss or Zenanage, how are you supposed to say that word, all at one time. And with 4 of those attacks, they will basically just die and they'll be dead. And we'll do that on a number of fights, X-Death, even the final boss, just a bunch of battles will have these like thresholds that we've taken into account.
Okay, so like you mentioned X-Death there. What's the threshold you have to work around in X-Death? Because that sounds pretty spicy, X-Death being the final boss.
Well, so this X-Death, so it's actually both X-Death fights, believe it or not. So the one in Castle X-Death is arguably a bit more dangerous than the final one. So the one for Castle X-Death is at about, I might have the number wrong, it's like 18,000 HP, I want to say. Like once he's below like 17,000, 18,000 HP, what will happen is he'll start using like Thundaga or Firaga, and the problem with that is for some reason, maybe it's just me, he tends to nuke the wrong person. Like if he nukes one person, you can kind of make do because he gives no experience or APB, but if he nukes Lena, your main DPS for that fight, then you're kind of in trouble, and then it's a reset. So for that fight, we'll do so mix is a big thing. So we're going to mix antidotes and holy waters to use a thing called Samson's powder or Samson's might power. I forget which word it is. It basically raises the character's level by 10. So that way, even though they're not actually level like 25, but they're level 15, they'll act like they're 25 before we start throwing money. So we'll do that 4 times. We'll throw some money. Then we'll do it 2 more times. We'll throw some money. And then we'll wait for him to do 1 more action. Ideally, he hasn't had enough turns to do Earthshaker, because if he I think it's around his 5th turn, according to the AI scripting from SNES. He has like a 2 out of 3 chance to do Earthshaker, which will be like an instant kill to everybody but Krylie or Kirill, again, however you say her name. So after that, and he attacks, then we just let the auto battler go for the last 2 Zeninages or guild tosses, and then that should go down. And then in the final fight, same idea. We found that it might have been Crimson who found this. Merely forgot the exact fire of this, but once you do 7 Samson mites on Bartz and Ferris, you attack once with each of them, and then you wait for Triaxstep to do an attack, because again, he's not at a threshold where he'll do like Meteor or one of the bigger hitting moves. Then you can auto battle, and then from there the fight should basically just win itself for the most part.
All right, very nice. In there, you mentioned Samson's Might mix. Are there any other mixes you use in the run?
Yeah, we do use a handful of mixes. So we'll use a Death Potion mix at least twice to take down both Gilgamesh and a fight with Twintanya. We're also going to, this is a PR specific strat from what I've been told, so I don't have any experience running SNES to kind of speak better to the differences, but I do know this is a PR specific strat. So at a part in the run, when we're doing not only a grind for learning mix on Ferris, but we're also killing dragon zombies to get dragon fangs, because we need 3 dragon fangs specifically for 3 of the fights in the final dungeon, the Void, one of which being the Callista Ferry fight you're seeing right now. The way it works is we pick up the Apollo Harp. So you get the tablet, you get 3 legendary weapons, we get the Masamune because it gives you first attack so we can flee and act immediately. We get the Apollo Harp, and then we get a Fire Lash to sell for money. The point of the Apollo Harp is it does, I believe it's 8 times damage. It does a huge damage boost to dragon type enemies. And so what we do is we berserk these bosses, which is the first thing we did. So we make them berserk. So all they'll do is basic attack us, so no spells or anything. In addition to that, it just makes them haste, berserk, and blink. And you think, okay, haste bad, blink bad. But thanks to the power of the Knight job class and the guard ability, which negates all damage done to that character, and they defend low-level people, we don't take any damage through these basic attacks. And even though Blink is active, the Apollo Harp does magic damage, not physical damage. So it doesn't trigger the dodged attack. So once you get everything kind of set up, and we do a different combination against the Apanda. We do like a Bless, it's like a turtle shell in a holy water instead to make him berserk versus the other one. But same thing, turn him into a dragon, and then we have Ferris just basic attack because we berserk Ferris as well, so the attacks just go kind of consistently and stuff, and just faster and faster. So we turn them into dragons and then nuke them from there with music.
I absolutely adore this strat. Oh man. I genuinely adore this strat. My eyes can't be peeled off. Alright, brilliant. Thank you very much, Woody, for your time. That was all very insightful. You know what's coming now? You have 5 seconds. Which Final Fantasy has the best soundtrack?
Final Fantasy VI. Nothing beats Dancing Mad in the Opera.
That was exactly 5 seconds. Final Fantasy VI. It's got a point. Final Fantasy VI does have a very good soundtrack. Probably shouldn't say that too often. They all do. They all genuinely have brilliant soundtracks. Anyway, to the next game, Final Fantasy III. Teams are Nikki on Team Mog, not Team Nikki, I'm sorry. Rupan on Team Choco, and to round it out, Ionic Karma on Team Tonberry. And here with us, we have Karma.
Hello. How's it going?
I'm doing alright. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. Excited to be part of this.
Okay, nice. Is there any team you wanted to be on specifically? Are you happy to be on Tonberry?
I'm perfectly fine being Tonberry. If I had to pick a team, I would have picked Team Choco, just because I love Chocobo so much, but honestly, I'm fine with any team.
Okay, that's cool. Alright, Final Fantasy III. This year, we're doing Pixel Remaster, Now, in Final Fantasy III, there's a whole bunch of different jobs, and we even use quite a lot of them throughout the run. Can you take me through a lot of the jobs that we'll end up using, strats, that kind of thing?
Yeah, sure. So we'll go into like high level first, and then we can dive deeper into them as we go through them.
Absolutely.
So yeah, in Final Fantasy III, we're going back from the job system as opposed to Final Fantasy II, which had like just more of a freeform thing. So the first job we start off with was just Onion Knight, or Freelancer if you played the DS version. It's essentially just the all-rounder class that can do technically a lot of things, but really doesn't do anything. And it's also really the only class we're allowed to choose from the very beginning. In the beginning, we use it because we have to, and then later on, we use strats, which I'll delve a little bit more deeper once we go into a little more discussion for certain equipment stuff. So the next class that we use is Monk, which Monk punches really hard, which is really good against the first boss to Jin, because we don't really have any good spell casting yet. So we just punch him until he dies. After that, we have Black Mage. Black Mage is really useful because magic early on does quite a bit of damage, and also you can target multiple enemies at once, which really helps against certain encounters, which have like a lot of low HP enemies, so it's good for clearing out random encounters. And also it's good for dealing damage, especially for the forced mini sections where our characters have to have the mini status effect for story reasons, so physical attacks do very little damage.
The tiny lads themselves.
The tiny lads, they're so adorable. It's like just little pixels for an already pixelated game. And after that, Black Mage, as you imagine, is very powerful, but sometimes, as most mages are, they're not very tanky. So then we have to switch over to the Red Mage, which can equip armor like fire resistance armor, ice resistance armor, all kinds of resistance armor, which is really useful against some bosses later on because they do a lot of damage, and without them, we would almost certainly die at the levels that we were at. After that, we have Thief, which is used for one thing and one thing only: running away, and running away really fast. And then after that, we have Scholar. Scholar is one of the MVPs for the mid section of the run. They have a unique trait for them where they deal double damage with any consumable item, the elemental items. They also heal for double HP if you use healing items, which is a little bit relevant, but not as relevant. Double damage for elemental weapons makes them do, assuming the enemy is weak to them, close to like 1,000 damage, sometimes even more. And that's really good for the mid-game bosses to just take them down consistently. After that, we have Knights, which we use very briefly for covering the thieves, who are usually low HP because we just use them to tank. We use the Knights to tank for the thieves because we don't really level them up. We're only leveling up 2 party members at that point in the game. And we also use them a little bit for like a strat at the very end of the fight where we're trying to petrify someone. So we just have the Knight tank for the Red Mages so they don't get smacked while we're setting up our strat for the end of the game. Then we have Black Belts, which we use sort of like the Monk, hits really hard, but also has a unique trait where it can kick. So Kick just kicks every enemy on the screen for AoE damage, so it's really useful for a few encounters and then for one boss. And then after that, we have Viking. Viking has super high defense, especially at low HP, where it takes pretty much always 1 damage from everything. We use that to catch up the 2 party members that have been leaving dead for pretty much the entire game up to this point, so we can catch them for EXP because we need them for one particular fight against Garuda, which is the last class that we use, is Dragoon. Dragoon has massive damage with jump, can avoid attacks with jump, and it's just the overall MVP that we use for the rest of the game, especially once we get access to Bloodlands.
So why is Dragoon like so overpowered?
No, Dragoon's overpowered for, as mentioned, it has very high damage with jump. It just does a tremendous amount of damage. The reason it's also really overpowered is because of the item called the Bloodlance. which if you equip 2 of them, it heals you for half the damage that you deal, which essentially makes them a self-sustaining monster that can just steamroll through the mid-game bosses and then the end-game bosses with just a single Dragoon up at any given time, which we only have 1 Dragoon at the end of the fight. So you just, essentially for the end-game bosses, occasionally you have to set up a thing or 2, but after that you just hit the jump button, and then you just wait there and pray that the boss doesn't hit you twice in a row, because sometimes that will kill you.
So how likely is that to happen when the boss hits you twice in a row, high rolls both times, oh no, I've been flattened, I have to reload the quick save?
So that doesn't happen too often against most of the bosses. A lot of the bosses, that's pretty much it would be that's never happened before kind of moment if that happened in the marathon. But there are some bosses where it is a big threat, when these usually come into the Dark World bosses. So Cerberus itself is pretty free. He can technically hit you twice in a row, but the chances of that are very, very low. And now that I said it, it's probably going to happen to someone. Echidna can use Meteor, and I think it can also use Flare. I can't remember exactly what it is, but Echidna has a pretty good chance of killing you. Two-Headed Dragon has a decent chance because it hits you for 2,000 if it hits you with its basic attack. But thankfully, we have strats where we keep someone petrified so that it's more likely they'll target the petrified character, especially because we're always jumping, so there's only a 50% chance you'll even have a chance to attack us anyways, which is actually lower than that because we have higher speed than the in-game bosses. The one boss that it is a big threat and can lose a lot of time if it happens is the final boss, Cloud of Darkness. Cloud of Darkness has it has few abilities, but I think it mostly just uses basic attack or particle beam. And as the fight goes on, it uses particle beam more and more until it's the only thing it uses. And if you get hit by particle beam twice in a row, there is a very good chance that you will die, especially if it gets a high roll. If you get a low roll on a particle beam, you can survive. And then if you're lucky, you might be able to use elixir in between just to heal yourself up, or you can just keep jumping and praying, because eventually the jump HP that you gain from Blood Lance will eventually heal you back up. But that is definitely the fight that can easily end a PB attempt of a run or set you back 5 minutes in a marathon setting.
Yeah, I unironically have a better success rate against Cloud of Darkness when I start jumping and then walk off. Don't try and elixir it, don't try and play it safe. If I just start jumping, walk off, come back to a dead Cloud of Darkness every time. It's tragic.
I've had the elixir strat work exactly once, and every other time I tried it, it just ended me on the floor dead.
Quick off-the-cuff question as well. FF3 does have a lot of jobs, and we just went through a lot of them. Do you have a favorite?
Favorite job? I would say that I really like. We don't use it in the speed one, unfortunately. But I really like the Summoner, because the summons in FF3 are just so cool.
Yes! Summoners so cool. Alright. Thank you for essentially agreeing with me. Alright, cool. Well, thank you very much for your time, comments. Very cool to hear
absolutely.
about. Now, final question. You've got 5 seconds. What's your favorite what Final Fantasy has the best OST?
Final Fantasy XIV. I don't mean the remastered versions of other Final Fantasy, I mean its original soundtrack.
Is that a vote for specifically Final Fantasy XIV, A Realm Reborn? I'm going to put 14. And see if that happens. So far, no one has voted for the same thing. We have one vote for 15, 13, 7, 10, 2, 8, 6, and 14. Which I'll leave as 14 for now, unless there's a tie later on, I guess. Next up, we have Lightning Returns. On Team Mog, we have King SPI. On Team Joker, we have Akiyoshi. And to round it out, Team Tonbury is D-Winds. With me, I believe I have King SPI.
Oh no, I'm not on Team Choco. Hey, Chris.
Not on Team Choco. Is it that bad?
I was hoping for Team Choco.
Is it that bad to be on Team Mog?
Well, it's not, but the thing about Team Choco is that I was really hoping to be able to switch the dress color to yellow and then equip the Chocobo hat. So I guess I'm not gonna have the honors this year.
Not this year, maybe another. Alright, so, first of all, apparently Lightning Returns has new tech since the last time it's been in the relay. One of those things is a double jump.
Yeah, so the double jump tech was discovered in 2021, I guess after the last time the game was in the relay. So what you're looking at right now is the double jump tech. That was the original video where we found it. The idea is that you switch your default garb, and then when you exit the menu, if you mash the jump button, nobody really understands exactly how it works, but the theory is that if you jump exactly on the same frame where you exit the menu, Lightning will end up doing a double jump. So that pretty much allows us to break the game in some pretty fun ways, because you can reach places where you're not really intended to go to.
So what do you end up skipping as a result of having double jump?
Yeah, I guess
I
originally
assume you're skipping things.
Yeah, exactly. Originally, when we found the tech, there wasn't anything like super spicy that was discovered. There's a few shortcuts here and there. But then recently, when I came back to the game earlier this year, I kind of got to work and found some interesting out of bounds that are actually helpful in an RTA setting. So there was a sequence of 2 skips that were found within the same day, basically, and the first skip is the Grave of the Colossi skip. That skip allows us to do, so we're going out of bounds close to Ruffian, and then from there we're able to trigger a zone load. So the way that the game works is that when you get to the end of a specific zone, the game will load, I guess, another zone. So like the game's not going to load the entire map, like of the Dead Dunes, for example. So what you're seeing now is the GOTC skip. So we're triggering a map load, which will drop us directly into one of the shrines, so the GOTC shrine. And that allows us to skip a whole bunch of running around and also picking up some items like a Pilgrim Crux that you need to open up a door within that shrine. But as you can see, we just drop straight into the tablet room. So, and then the second skip is this one. That is, I used to call it the Wrath skip. I suppose it's more of a shortcut to get to Ruffian. So we're able to bypass this sandstorm here by going out of bounds on the left side. And we're able to go like literally straight into Ruffian, which saves us like 2 minutes of running around. The old route used to turn around and then we would run for like 2 minutes to go all the way back to the GOTC area, which we don't have to do anymore in the run. So I guess those 2 skips are really the basis for the 2023 route.
How much time cumulatively does all of this save?
Yeah, so double jumps are not guaranteed to work like in the first try. So currently people will use turbo for this. It's fairly flaky, but if you're using turbo, usually you get them within 3 or 4 attempts. But yeah, I would say optimally with these changes, we save about 2.5 minutes, which is for Lightning Returns, that's huge. I mean, the game was already very optimized, so saving 5 seconds used to be insane. So now we're going way past that. So yeah, it's a bit of a change from the last time the game was in the relay.
Is there anything that you can't get as a result of these skips, or is it just you'll now skip story triggers and bypass them entirely?
Yeah, it's mostly story triggers and just like a bunch of running around. So it's really nice in that sense where we're not skipping like half of the game and now it's completely glitched. So yeah, we're basically skipping running around. We're skipping a couple of items here and there, but it's mostly saving a bunch of running around.
Okay. And since last relay, I believe you found even more skips. They're just of a different kind.
Well, I wasn't the one who found. I'm assuming you're talking about the trigger skips, but
yeah, the community. I'm more.
I'm gonna give
the community.
I'm gonna give credit to Shirasu for this one, a very famous and legendary 13 trilogy runner. But yeah, the trigger skips is another kind of skip where you can, if you're attacking exactly on the same frame where you would hit a trigger, sometimes you can skip it. So these are smaller time save, but for example, in the prologue, like literally in the first 2 minutes of the game, there's a skip that I reset to where, it saves going into a potion shop. Like you have this required tutorial, I guess, of how to buy potions and how to use them, and you can skip that now with these trigger skips, so you save like 5 or 6 seconds. So there's maybe 2 or 3 of these throughout the run, and it's another one of those cases where it's frame perfect, we think, and very flaky. But yeah, I would say the trigger skip is maybe like a 10% chance of working from from my attempts. I would say 10% is about fair.
10%. Oh boy. So, like, how reset heavy as a result does Lightning Returns get? Because if you're saying, that laugh is scary. Because if you're saying this is a game where like 5 seconds can potentially be huge, and then suddenly we've got things that save 20, 30 seconds, but they're a 10% chance.
Yeah, well, let's put it this way. I would say double jumps and these trigger skips are maybe 10%. The run also requires you to get Imperil, which is a 15% drop. Magnet, which saves you 30 seconds, is another 22.5% drop. And then there's the phone booth, which is like 1 out of 9 chance to get on the first try. If not, you lose like 5 seconds every attempt. So the run has always been very reset heavy. I suppose the double jumps make that even worse. I mean, you don't have to go for them, but if you're trying to get like a world record type of time, you have to now, which is, I guess it is what it is.
But in a marathon setting, it's okay. Just realistically, you'll lose maybe a minute here, maybe a minute there, and it's not the end of the world.
Yeah. Well, actually, because Lightning Returns has some timing elements, the new route is actually safer because you end up running around a little bit less. So you're less likely to get into some specific encounters that could just kill your run, or like you have to load the autosave. So in that sense, I would say the new route is even safer for a marathon. The only thing is you might lose like 30 seconds if you don't get the double jump quickly.
Yeah, I think that's a marathon's dream, honestly. Oh no, the worst part is maybe you'll lose 30 seconds. Quickly, let me shake your hand. Like, you're on.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time. I've been asking everyone so far, what's your favorite Final Fantasy OST? You've got 5 seconds to answer. Which one is it?
Easy. 13-2.
13-2. Alrighty then. That is another unique vote. 13-2. I guess it makes sense that, we'll vote for their own game. But 13-2. That is 8 individual votes. That is insane. Next up, we have Final Fantasy XII, the Zodiac Age. Teams are Dessa on Mog, Harb on Choco, and Rooster on Team Tonbury. And here with me, I believe I have Rooster.
Hello. How's it going?
Hello. It's going well. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm excited for this relay, man.
Oh, same. Is Team Tonbury the one you wanted to end up on? Not too bothered? Where you at?
Oh, no, I absolutely love Team Tomberry. Sort of came in late to the scene, but making noise and stabbing people. You know how it is.
Oh, hopefully we can get by without any more karma incidents this year. You know what they're like. So, FF12, Zodiac Age, very different from the PS2 run. One of the main differences, of course, speed up. That's allowed in any percent. I don't think that's a normal thing across Final Fantasy. I think it's specific to 12 because it was in the base JP Zodiac Age game or something.
That's correct, yeah. IZJS, International Zodiac Job System.
Thank you. Oh, look at that. That's why he's here. How does that change the route? Because obviously it's got to change the route a fair amount now that you have this massive speed up. You can't micromanage the same way. What does it change?
Right. It almost makes it an entirely new game, really. So FF12, the original, is really a noteworthy game just because of how difficult it is. But when you are going 4 times as fast, those difficult, precise inputs really aren't possible anymore. Like, even a computer couldn't put them in properly. There's also the speed up doesn't mitigate the lag. So like when you press a button and it takes time to open the menu, that's the same speed, even though the game itself is going 4 times as fast. So, so really all of those subtle, difficult things can't be done anymore, and so you have to really fall back on the gambit system, which is also a really unique thing in Final Fantasy XII, right? Gambits are pretty much just a set of commands that you tell your party to do while when they see certain things. Like if, I see this character's below blank, I'll do blank. If I see an enemy that has this status, I'll attack them with this ability, and so on. And so you really got to fall back on those. So you manage at a high level, and then no matter how fast the game is going, you can just press forward, and the characters will take care of what's going on.
Okay, brilliant. I'm just looking at what's going on now. You seem to just be slaughtering brain pans everywhere.
Yeah, right. And so I used this clip because in the original, this was sort of... it started out not too difficult. We actually used a glitch here, but at this point in the current vanilla speedrun, it's probably one of the highest skill level parts of the whole run. You have to really get to it's like 10 meters away is when they appear, but if you get within 6 meters, then they can hit you with bad abilities. So you got to get all 4 party members within that 10 to 6 meter range in order to hit them with all your abilities, but not get hit by theirs. And you have to get that before a certain amount of time, and it's just super, super precise. But it's too much to do in the TZA, in the Zodiac Age, with the speed up, and so you really just got to set up your party. In this clip, I have them just with some physical weapons, like a katana on Ash, or Bosch in this example, and then a greatsword, and it's just like just go to town on them. That's all there is. I also wanted to use this clip for one other reason, just because it's a sort of an interesting story in this game, because the underflow glitch is something that we used, and it was patched in later versions of the game. So like starting with the greatest hits, actually still on the PS2, they patched this. And so we have a really, really interesting scenario in 12 uniquely, which is that later versions of the game patched some glitches, but not all things that we considered glitches were patched. And so now in this clip also, there's a few cases where like enemies don't appear until you double back because of like a limitation that's in the game that stops enemies from appearing when there's too many enemies in the same area. And we use this to despawn things, and we called it the despawn glitch, but it's still present in the Zodiac Age, so it's sort of the despawn feature, you could say.
How much is that? Is that used frequently through then the TZA run?
Yeah, actually quite a bit. Pretty much if there's a dangerous area, like the area right between, what's his name, Daedalus and Shemazai, there's really dangerous enemies, we just despawn them. And it's a little bit harder because in the original version we got Immobilize, the spell that stops one character, anyone with the ability inflicted from moving. And by leaving them behind, it made it really easy to just switch the camera back and forth and then despawn the enemies on either side. We don't get that ability here, so we just have to come up with another way of doing it. And here if you just tell someone to do something to themselves, to someone who's out of range, they'll say, hey, this character's out of range, I can't do anything, so I'm going to stand still, and then they just stand still, and you got like 30 seconds before they cancel their ability, and you can use that to do the despawn. But beyond that, though, it's a little bit of just like a consideration in various places, like this Brain Pans clip that I showed, because, you won't realize it's happening, but like when I first run by an area, there's no brain pan because the game is saying, hey, there's too many enemies, and then you come back. And so there's a few places like that also.
FF12 will forever be black magic to me. It is.
Yeah, there's a lot going on.
Just even when it doesn't look like there's a lot going on, there's still so much going on.
Yep.
I saw this clip in preparation for the relay, for this pre-show. And apparently I understood maybe 10% of what was happening. It is an insane game. So, speaking of things that are insane, Seitengrat. This category is no Seitengrat. Why is it no Seitengrat?
Right, so the Seitengrat, I think, first appeared in IZJS. so the sort of second wave of releases in Japan, and the Seitengrad, Gendarm, and Trango Tower, I think are the three names, are basically just, they put them in as Easter eggs. They didn't even give them models, they're just literally invisible weapons and armors, and they're supposed to be ridiculously hard to get. So the Seitengrad is in a chest that has a 1% chance to appear, and a 1% chance to contain the Seitengrad, and is also invisible, so it's truly an Easter egg. But as an Easter egg, it's completely busted. So it blocks. It has a 75% evasion rate, so you dodge 75% of abilities that hit you, and it's got like 50% more damage than the strongest ultimate weapon, and it's completely insane. And so, if it's 1% chest and a 1% chance to get the chest, then that's like a 1 in 10,000 chance. But of course, we're speedrunners. We look at the code and we figured out exactly how to get it every single time, right? Maybe some historic people may remember back in the day when IZJS was a thing and we didn't have it figured out that you would listen for clicks. This is actually kind of funny. The chest would appear, and when it appeared, you could hear the game loading the CD, and it would click an extra time as you loaded the screen, so you could tell the chest appeared from this. So this is actually how we got it before. And it was sort of like nobody believed it, but we eventually realized, like, yeah, this is actually why it clicks an extra time. That's a real thing. But eventually the RNG manipulation was figured out, and then IZJS, you can just get it really easily. And on any of the console versions, the RNG starts from the same point every single time, so you can manipulate it very easily. But on the PC, and this is the category running for the marathon, the RNG is initialized from a different place every time, so you have to read the memory in order to manipulate the RNG, and so we just banned it. We just said, hey, we don't want to read the memory, so let's just ban it, and then this really, really dumb weapon that makes the speedrun super easy, just get rid of it. And so that's why we're doing no Seitengrad.
That's fair. I've absolutely seen clips on YouTube of standing outside the Yasmat super boss arena, outside of where Yasmat can reach you, and you're just plopping it off with Seitengrad arrows from outside.
Right. I didn't mention it also has 20-meter range, which is twice anything else. Everything else is maxed out at 10, I think.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I used it as a kid, and it's very easy to see why.
Yeah.
And last but not least, in TCA, you go into the trial mode quite a lot. You actually back out from the main game to go into the trial mode. Why is that?
Right, so this is something that's really interesting that we realized is going to be a problem really early on, which is the game TCA has autosaves. Anytime you load a new screen, it saves all of your data, but it doesn't really save. It's just like your data, and so it lets you go into the trials with that data at that point, regardless of what else is going on. So you could be in the middle of the final dungeon, screen before the last boss, and then just like, you know what, I'm going to go back into the trials. And that's not a terrible problem on its own, except in the first trial, there's a chest that contains the diamond armlet, which is just like 6,000 gil or something, 5,000 gil, and so you can just really, really quickly, and then every time you go through a new trial stage, it also saves. So you can go do one stage of trials, get the chest, get the gil, and then back out and be good. And it's just like a ridiculously fast LP and gil farm. So in that clip that I shared, I just go through the trial twice just to show sort of what we do. We go further in the trials just because there's a ton of LP, and LP is one of the main constraints for where you go in the speedrun in your license board. But we also get that gil, and all of that gil goes straight to our investments.
How much do you end up using the trial modes throughout the speedrun? Is this the only case, or is it used earlier, maybe a bit before?
We do it one time early to get 6,000 gil. I think it's 6,000 for a bunch of Phoenix Downs to do some Dustia farming. And then after that, we do, after Belias, when we have the full party together and we have Fyra, Fyra lets us farm the trials a lot faster, we do 5 more. So that 5 is mapped out to give us enough LP that we'll get everything we need when we need it, and the gil is most of what we need. The rest of it we get just along the way.
Okay, and you mentioned Dustia farming there. You want to go into that real quick?
Yeah, sure. So the trials is interesting. It gives you a lot of LP, but none of the enemies drop any experience, and so you don't get any levels from that. And so you start off at level 1, and down the line, the levels aren't worth that much, but the first few levels are quite a bit of stats, and Dustia is an enemy. It's a rare game that appears right next to the opening area, and it's much, much stronger than you should be able to fight at that point. But it's pretty easy to spawn if you just have one character below 10% HP, and you can kill it with a Phoenix Down. So like I said, we do a trials, we get the gil buys us Phoenix Downs, and then we kill, I think the current route for all all 3 runners, we kill 12 Dustia, which is enough to get us to like a level 12 or 11 or 12, but that's a huge boost to our stats early on, and it also gets us enough LP for Dark. We all 3 of the first 3 party members get Dark on Red Mage, just because Dark solos everything for the first like hour of the speed run, and then we switch to the other party where we do the physical route, like you were seeing in the Brain Fans clip.
All right, well, thank you very much for coming on, Rooster.
Thank you for having me.
Very much appreciated. That click thing, I will genuinely probably steal and pass off as my own fact to seem interesting. That's a brilliant.
I have some amusing clips of myself just leaning over the webcam, listening to my PlayStation for old ICJS world records.
It's genuinely glorious. Right, last question then. What Final Fantasy has the best soundtrack?
For me, I have to put all my money on FF13. I think it has the most listenable soundtrack because you can just put on a track and a lot of them are jams. One other thing I'll just mention that I think really gives it a big advantage is that a lot of the old Final Fantasy tracks, if you actually listen to them, get really repetitive. You'll have like a 3-minute song, but it's like a 1-minute loop 3 times. But FF13 music really evolves over the course of the track, and so it's really, you can just put the whole soundtrack on and jam to it. So I really love FF13's soundtrack.
Okay. Thank you very much, Rooster. So that's Final Fantasy 13, which puts Final Fantasy 13 into the lead. Yeah, that was 5 seconds. Don't worry about it. Yeah, look, I chickened out, and it seemed rude to interrupt, especially after that clicking fact. Anyway, we've moved on. Final Fantasy 7 coming up now. And I know there's someone in the call who's very much anticipating whether he's on the team he wants to be on. We have Colin Bolts on Team Mog. And Feck on Team Choco, which means Broodals goes on to Team Tonbury. Hello, Mr. The Broodals.
Well, hey there, ChrisTenarium.
Hello there. How is it going?
Oh, brilliant now. Wonderful, in fact. This is magnificent.
Need I even ask if you are happy to end up on Tonbury?
No, now I get to take out 2 of my close friends in one fell sweep, and it's going to be glorious.
Oh man, I really need to look out for the Tonbury fanatics. They're starting to get to their heads.
I'm gonna have to unleash the boy, bring him back out of retirement.
Anyway, welcome on, Brood. So last year with 7, we did slots where we used Kate's slots to just pop a lot of the bosses. This year, we're doing no slots. How does no slots make up for the lack of that limit break and kill bosses?
So no slots is exactly as you described. Simply the only thing that you're not allowed to do is use Kate Sliff's slots limits. That's really hard to say, by the way. We can use anything else that we want, and the things that we got are pretty crazy. So Materia Keeper is actually the first boss that changes quite drastically, because you're no longer just able to, slot him out. You have to instead use a combination of bio, sticking, hopefully that actually lands the poison, and then Tifa is then going to run in and punch him for the remaining difference to make exactly a specific amount of damage dealt, so that sooner or later into the fight, the poison ticks are going to finish him off. And there are many, many, many more awesome creative strategies that come out of it when you're not just using the same ability. So it makes it way more different as an experience. A lot more stuff obviously goes into creating the fights.
How much do you end up having to adjust in a fight like Materia Keeper then?
Materia Keeper is probably one of the most dynamic fights going up. It's up there. Just the amount of things that you have to keep track of and things like that. It's not too difficult, obviously, when you've done it a few times and things like that. It becomes a bit more manageable. You'll still scuff it sometimes. But Materia Keeper is very much in his own realm, the way that Materia Keeper's fight goes. There are a number of other fights that involve with poison, but they're not quite as specific in the way that they're applied. They're more of like a Hail Mary, try and get them stick as soon as possible, rather than I actually can't finish this fight until it's stuck mentality. But that's actually the point of the game fortunately enough, when most of the bosses that do come into the fray actually have substantial amounts of HP, you go from like 1 or 2,000 up to 10,000 pretty quickly around the time that Materia comes in, just because of the Cosmo Canyon skip immediately before you skip an entire dungeon and its boss. So you kind of get ramped a little bit too quickly going into that. Another big one that requires quite a lot of brain power is Schizo. This dragon that we can see on the screen here it's got 2 heads which will counter you based on how many times you hit them. Not the damage dealt, but actually individual hits. So we channel all of our energy into Tifa and have attack them in specific ways so that they die at specific times to count as we kind of use the counter to our advantage that way. A lot of paying attention to the roles that you're dealing, how many turns you're attacking for, when to switch out of certain you can't use death blow the whole time, basically things like that. They're all moving at the same time.
Okay, so there is a lot of changing and adapting and crazy things going on at any given time.
Yeah, so the RNG in the fights is a lot greater than it is, I suppose, in no slots. You go into a fight in no slots and you have to learn slots. So as long as your initial setup and your plan going into it is typically try and build Kate at limit or just spend what you've got. Some fights like Hojo are a multi-stage fight where you have to rely on Kate getting hit in between them to build that limit back up so you can continue to kill them. But usually you're able to build limits between fights and things like that for Kate Sif to spend it on. But with that aside, yeah, you do have to come up with some pretty, well, I say creative, but it is just a lot of Tifa running in and kicking them. There's a lot of that.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. Creative kicking.
Sometimes your main character just walks up and kicks a dude's blade. Well, what can you do? Okay, I'm going to try and make this next question sound as natural as possible, and the eagle eye amongst you may realise that I don't entirely realise what I'm asserting. Step routing for FF7 only works on field screens. How are encounters manipulated in other circumstances?
Right, so a field screen is something when you're in a dungeon, for example. It's like you've got the static background that doesn't move. Whereas world map encounters, you obviously can get encounters on the world map. And unlike some other games where you can step route, for example, in FF5 across the world map, I believe, and that's all part of it. Whereas FF7, it has a completely different system going on, which the very, very clever individuals in the community have found that depending on the in-game time that you transition into them, you can then apply certain movement and techniques to navigate the world map and avoid these encounters completely. Sometimes, or you can limit them to maybe to one and try and prioritize it not being like a pincer or something, which is a very, very nasty thing to get in this game.
How much control do you have over like what you get, assuming you play like a human and not a TAS?
Yeah, a surprising amount. So the idea is that when you load up the when you're picking, first thing that happens is you open your spreadsheet and you pick a time that looks good. So whenever you're going to do this, you'll have some kind of a queue. So for example, when Motorball dies, the split for Motorball, it's that plus 30 something seconds. That's when you know, okay, I'll look at these 3 or 4 IGTs and I'll target one of those. And you'll have a range. There'll be almost every other second or so, and then you'll have to do something when you enter the world map to allow it to work. Just a bit of movement, a couple taps on the left or down or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Can you ever get into a situation where you're looking at all of the ranges in front of you and being like, okay, well, this is all awful and all leads to a pincer in some way, shape, or form? Like, does that happen, or is there pretty much always a way to avoid that?
No, so that should never happen. That should never really happen. Usually the worst case scenario is certain times leaving Midgar, you'll find that you haven't got an IGT for 20 seconds or so. So it's a really good time to go and change the color of your menu and just, make it all look pretty. you got a little bit of time to play with.
Yeah, really. On that, I don't know if I'm too confident necessarily in asserting this, but elevator manip has become more common in FF7. I don't know if manipping itself was a thing last year.
No, I think they did do it. In fact, I checked. Yeah, they definitely did do it last year.
They definitely did it. Okay, but it's become like incredibly more common to the point where I have heard of it and I know what it is, and I mostly even know what it involves. Right? Like, what is it, and then how does that conversely affect the run?
So elevator manip, is the closest to, I suppose, without using a real tool, to using a tool to kind of help you do the run. It's kind of cheeky. It's pretty cheeky. So the way it starts is you have to find out what. It's not to call it a random number is kind of misleading because it's completely trackable. But there is a value that affects certain things that would be considered random in FF7, and one of them is a value that the community has dubbed the list value, and that one is essentially the seed for how you need to handle the elevator. So if you can find out what that is, you can reasonably manipulate the elevator. The problem is finding out what it is. And there was a strategy where you'd watch an NPC for a few seconds and take that as time lost to find out where you were. But the more modern one is that when you go to Aerith's house and you're running around in the garden stealing all of her stuff, as you re-enter, you have the time while you're in Aerith's house, because it's about a minute and a half of mashing, where you can re-watch your video back in slow motion, and you can look at the waterfall, man. The secret's in the waterfall, man. And you just watch it back, and you can take that information and you can use it by putting that information into a spreadsheet and say, you are here in the list value. This is where you are currently. And then there is another metric for when you leave. You look at the save crystal, how long it goes round, how many rotations it does, X, Y, and Z, and you can pin that position to when you leave, that you can set this list value into a groove, so that by the time you get to the elevator, it's in the place where you want it, and then you can continue to follow another spreadsheet. There's a few spreadsheets involved. But as you're going up, essentially it's a 16 frame loop, and on each loop, they will always, with the seeds that we've suggested, there's always at least one per frame of 16 that will take you to a floor where you don't have a fight, but you instead have a manager.
And then
So
the door's open to see the manager, and he goes, "Ah," and then runs away.
He's like, "Hey, I'm not supposed to be here. It's my day off." But ultimately, it saves somewhere around 1.5 to 2 minutes, I believe. And it also gives you an extra fight, which can actually get you it levels you up a tiny bit too. Gives you 2 fights. It gives you a tiny bit of experience, which actually does make a little bit of a difference, which, interestingly enough.
Very good. All right. Well, thank you so much, Broodles.
No, thank you.
Appreciated having you here. You now know what's coming. I would like to know your favorite Final Fantasy soundtrack.
My favorite. Man, stop playing. You know it's 9.
Yeah, I knew perfectly well it was 9. All right. You have to ask to be sure. You can never just assume, but like we all knew it was 9. That means as a result that 13 is still winning with 2 votes, and everything else has 1. Very, very diverse answers. Alright, anyway, next up we have Mystic Quest. On Team Mog, we have El Magus. On Team Choco, we have Tybolt. And to round it off, Tonbri as TQ winner. With me, I believe I have El Magus.
Good evening.
Good evening. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Except for I will have to play this game during the relay, but outside of that, I'm doing very good. Very excited for the relay.
Okay, well, very conflicting messages there, but that's okay.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Alright, so on Mystic Quest, it is, you've told me, a very basic game, yet it's very random. Like, how is that? How does it make so random despite being so basic?
Yeah, so Mystic Quest kind of got released at a time where in the Western gaming market, there were not a lot of RPGs out there. So, and at the time, FF4 came over to the US as FF2, and it didn't really do so well in NA. and the people at Squaresoft were like, we can't ship FF5 over to the West. It's too complicated. So the NA branch made their own little game, basically your introduction RPG, which they dubbed Final Fantasy Mystic Quest. And it really is just that. It is very, very simplistic. You are basically a hero, and you gotta find 4 crystals and then save the world. And you only have one partner at a time with you, and as you can see in the video here, the fights are really simple. You have basically the option to fight with the weapon you have selected, or can choose from a spell that you have collected at some point during the game, and that's basically it. The damage and everything you do based on your level is very static. It's always going to be the same on every enemy. If you hit a certain enemy with a sword, it's always going to do 100 damage on that enemy specifically. And you know that going in when you're doing the run. Oh, I'm gonna hit this guy with the sword. I'm level 14. I'm doing 100 damage now. You know that. What makes it so random, on the other hand, is, as you can see, you run around on the map, and then the enemies, you can see them, and you enter these formations, which either contain 1, 2, or 3 enemies in random encounters. And these formations can vary. There can be completely different enemies. There's always the base enemy that you can see on the map in that formation, but there can be other enemies in there. This formation we have on the screen right now has 3 ninjas, but there can also be a wolf in there, for example. And this diversion in a speedrun setting can gain or lose you time in a lot of places throughout the run. The run is about 2 hours long, and that's why you can gain or lose time basically everywhere.
Oh boy. Man, as someone who speedran a lot of RPGs, what you said initially sounded very good. Wow, that must be incredible for routing, stuff like that. If you always know you are going to hit X for Y, brilliant. And then we quickly went into nightmare territory.
It's a mixed bag. That's what makes it so interesting, though. Going for a PB is an absolute nightmare, like you said. You see the timer, you see pain in this game, but it's incredibly fun to play. As basic as it is, the menus are very responsive, very quick, and you do have to make a lot of momentary decisions. You see the formation, and you have to know exactly what you have to do in order to get rid of them as fast as possible, which is that's the real fun part about the game.
That's cool. Also, you mentioned how this was made in the US and then called Mystic Quest. Is that why in Japan it's called Final Fantasy USA? Am I correct in saying that?
That is absolutely correct, yes.
Oh, there you go. We all learned something today. That's very interesting. So, you went into RNG a little bit there. I'm into it a little bit during Final Fantasy VIII. How every Final Fantasy has a thing they're known for. That even if you don't know it or you haven't seen on the run, you will still have heard of it. Now, I would argue that Mystic Quest thing is Pazuzu.
Yeah. So randomness. There is one boss in the game in a dungeon. It's Pazuzu's Tower, and the boss is Pazuzu, as you mentioned. And normally in an RPGs, you kind of you walk through this dungeon, and then the boss is waiting there at the very end of the dungeon, and then you have to fight him. In Pazuzu's Tower, that's not quite how it works. The bird's there. You can talk to him very early in the dungeon too, but he keeps moving. So there's effectively 6 floors in that tower, and you talk to him for the first time on the 3rd floor, and after that, his position is random on which floor he is, and that in a speedrun, if you get really unlucky, can lose you up to 11 minutes, and you can't really do anything about that. If he decides to go to floor 2, which you get access to at the very, very end, that is 11 minutes slower than if it was floor 6, which is the best floor you can get, and you get the earliest access to the boss.
So how likely is something like that to be? Is it just equal chance for
it's
whatever
equal
floor?
chance for everything. Yeah, we do effectively also, if you want to dig a little deeper, we do know the value that is responsible for where he goes, but it's frame based, so it's it's hard to tell, especially in this game where everything on the map and stuff is static. There's no waterfall like in FF7 where you can just take a look real quick and you know exactly where you are, right? So, yeah, that's not happening.
So you just have to waltz up and then hope that it is
right.
relatively close.
You do have to hope, pretty much, yeah.
Oh.
So like the results in between are kind of okay-ish. Like 6 is the best, 2 is the absolute worst, which is 11 minutes, and then you have the range between there. Like you can get floor 4, 5, or 1, which is between 3 and 5 minutes ish lost. Which is not the end of the world, honestly. The game is random enough where that might not even matter for your PB attempts. Like, might as well not if you have a really good run going, but it's there.
That is
the thing.
That is crazy. You just get to a section in a speedrun and it's just like, okay, well, this could be instantaneous, or I could lose 11 minutes, and let's roll the dice
harsh.
and see what the plan is today.
Yeah.
All right. Well, and then as a result, are there any glitches in the run?
So there's 2 big glitches in the run. And then there's one that you cannot avoid, which I'm just gonna shortly explain. But the first big one is a gigantic sequence break that was found about 4 to 5 years ago now.
Oh, pretty recent.
So the game has like 4 consumable items you can have: your basic heal and status heal and whatnot, which you'd never really use like in a run, because like you can do all that stuff with your spells anyway and better. But why that's important is a couple of years back we found out you can buy all these items at vendors, and it turns out you can buy 0 of an item, which the game doesn't really like that though. Like if you have 0 of a consumable item in your inventory, you use it, it rolls back to 255, and the item next to it transforms as well. And so what we can do is, if we do that right, we can manipulate our entire key item inventory, because that's next to our consumable inventory, in a way where we can sequence break an entire area with that. It's pretty interesting. You would figure that we could skip more than that, but the game is surprisingly solid, actually, when it comes to plot triggers. Like, it's not actually key item mode most of the time, but rather you have to do some sort of event in order to progress. So we do end up saving 20 minutes with that, but we are significantly more underleveled after that part, which is about 40 minutes into the run. And encounters become more dangerous with that, obviously, but it is what it is. We saved the 20 minutes and we never look back.
How much scarier is it then, like, compared to before?
I mean, it's not really that it's scary, because if you lose a fight, you can always just retry it. You know, like, it's not like you game over or have to save anywhere. Like, you can always just retry the fight, but it does become significantly slower to advance because you're so low level. Because your main character is always slower than the enemy, which would not necessarily be the case if you were properly leveled, but now it is, so you're just always going to take hits in random encounters, which automatically slows you down.
Okay, that's cool. And then you mentioned another glitch.
Yeah, the second glitch is a big one that probably, if you've played the game, you've kinda like heard of, or at least read somewhere about. It's like we can glitch the last boss, who has an insane amount of HP comparatively. We can heal him, and he takes damage instead of getting healed, because his HP pool is just too big. So he effectively dies in like 3 hits. Like, this is the only boss that you can really kill that fast, because you know you can just overflow his HP, and then that's that. Easy.
Alright, well, thank you very much. I'm not entirely sure I know what to expect from Mr. Quest now when it comes
Nobody knows what to expect from this game. That's why it's so great. That's why it's so great. It's the great equalizer.
It's the great... Oh, we have a few of those, don't worry. Oh boy, oh boy. Alright, well, thank you very much. And then, to round it off, same thing I've asked everyone. Which Final Fantasy has the best soundtrack? You've got 5 seconds.
Cheating answer, FF14. If 14 doesn't count, then 4.
If 14 doesn't count, then 4. I've accepted one answer of FF14, so I think I will take that. Although technically, the first answer was 14 1.0, so if they're tied, we'll give the edge to the other game. Alright, moving on. We now have Final Fantasy IV. The teams are Blue Harvey on Mog, Shadowway on Team Choco, and Ben Desh on Team Tonberry, whom I believe we have on the line.
Yes, hello.
You're going to need to be turned up. Okay, how's it going?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here.
Okay, that is good to hear. Okay, Final Fantasy IV. This is the first time we're doing the 3D PC version. This is a version that I enjoy very much. It has a, I guess you could call a somewhat unique glitch to it.
Yeah.
Would you like to take us through the reverse glitch?
Yeah, the mini reverse glitch. It's like such a random glitch because all you have to do is like when you're outside of battle, if you use mini on like your party, well, first of all it like shrinks and unshrinks you, right? But it also applies the reverse effect for the next battle. And this effect makes it so that everything that would normally damage you now heals you, and everything that previously healed you now damages you. And because every enemy is like programmed to just attack you, they will just heal you and you're invincible. So like for many key battles, like intense boss fights, we're just invincible and we can just go all in on offense, just try to KO the bosses as fast as possible. And it really enables some incredible strategies that are so fun to do when you like pull them off just right. There's also another variant of the glitch where you need to cast Toad instead, and instead of applying reverse, this applies Faith, which is like normally only accessible via twin casting. It's like up to a 20% boost in magic damage, which for some battles is very much appreciated because, you know, damage is damage. So yeah, that's the gist of that glitch.
Yeah, it is a very, very fun glitch that makes a lot of bosses very different as a result. Are there any bosses that are like more awkward as a result of having this?
Well, more so maybe when we routed the game, because an unintended effect or something that's not as obvious is that when we tried to heal magic in battle with like the Osmos spell, right? That would normally heal magic or MP points, right? But if we got the reverse effect applied, that would remove magic. So for certain battles, we've just realized that hey, it's not worth it being invincible if it means we're gonna have less MP for this battle. So it's like we have this great glitch, but we can't always use it. And when we have Tala in the party, even though we have access to it, sometimes we won't use it because, well, we need the magic.
Yeah, things like that when routing are nightmarish. Are there like any hard bosses then throughout the run? Because obviously you'd think that, okay, brilliant, the bosses can only heal us. Surely this is like a cakewalk. But like not necessarily true, right? There are some bosses that can cause trouble and can kill you, or some that can like lose you a lot of time.
Yeah, for me personally, the worst boss I think is Kanyatsu. You see him on screen.
Absolutely agreed. Yep.
Yeah, but like you're invincible in the battle, right? But he can waste so much time, and every time he attacks, it's a 50-50 chance if he's gonna do something that does nothing to you or something that is horrible. Like he can cast Sleep, it hits everyone in your party, and it can hit everyone, I think, except maybe Cecil or something. And like he can just keep using it and put everyone to sleep and lose you so much time. But the worst thing he can do is cast Slow, which, you know, it slows us down a lot. Like the irony is not lost on me that in a speed run, being slowed down like loses a lot of time. But like even the animation is just so slow, and it hits all 5 of our characters, and he can like do it twice in a row, even though we're already slowed down, and it's just so slow.
It
So yeah,
it's very painful.
very
And then
frustrating.
speaking of painful bosses as well, do you want to take us through why Legay is
Yeah,
potentially
Lugai.
such a nightmare? Either
Yeah,
either a dream or oh god, it's happening again.
yeah. So in like the second phase, I guess, like he has a gimmick where he will use reversal gas, which well, it casts reversal on everyone. This is like where this status effect was intended to be in use. So obviously he leads off with this right away, and the strategy is just to, hey, we can just use 2 elixirs on him and he will instantly die. But he can immediately, right after having cast reversal gas, he can cast it again, and now it just turns into a normal battle. And we don't like that because using 2 elixirs is super fast and very convenient.
Mm.
So when that happens, we just hope that he uses triple reversal gas. But if he doesn't, he can just start attacking us again and again and again, and we have to defend and heal. But if we are very unlucky, he will just slaughter the entire party, and we'll have to redo the first phase of the boss, and then hope that on our second attempt he just plays nicely and dies right away.
Yes, very much reincarnating the old meme of "Oh baby, a triple." You very much need it if you see
Yeah,
double
exactly.
reversal. And then lastly, there's Manip in this game. That's a fairly
Yeah.
new result that I believe has only been found in the last year. Scrubs
Yeah.
like me run no Manip. I think some people have just chosen not to run
Yes.
Manip, like Shadowway. He's just chosen not to do it, but he's still very fast. What
Yeah.
is like Manip? What are the benefits that you get from it? How's it done?
Well, the RNG is like decided the second you open the game. So if you change the date and time on your computer and open the game, like launch it at a specific second, you can control the RNG, always get the same RNG every single time. And the first thing we used this for was recall many for the second boss, Octomemoth. Because in that battle, like we have Tala who just joined, but like he has like forgotten his old and powerful spells, and instead he has the ability recall, where there's a chance he'll use a random spell he used to know. So here we can actually manip him to use Thundaga twice in a row instead of having to rely on Thunder. So instead of dealing 200 damage, we can deal 1000 damage, which is huge.
All right,
Huge
that's
difference.
it. That's it. I'm doing Manip. That's it.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And like the second thing that Manip really opened up was the safe travel, like incorporating safe travel into the speedrun. Because you have to do lots of side quests to do it. It takes like 10 minutes, all of the side quests. But then you get safe travel, absolutely no encounters, and you save all of that time back. But a huge barrier here was the super rare rainbow pudding drop, which if you've ever played this game and tried to get like legit, it's horrible. Like it can take you hours and days and weeks, which it did for me when I tried to find a manip that gave me the item.
Oh
And
boy.
now we finally have a manip. The battle is quick, we get the item and we can do the side quests. And for the entirety of the 2 last dungeons, we can just sit back, relax, and listen to the wonderful music as we just stroll through the final dungeon.
So, do you want to explain or go into like quickly why you get to listen to the music, whereas someone who doesn't have this wouldn't be able to listen to the music like in its entirety?
Well, it's mostly because the music would always be interrupted by the random encounters that you always run away from. We don't do any random encounters in this run except when we manipulate for rainbow pudding. So yeah, that's why.
And obviously, there are some runners who do quick save, quick load.
Yeah, QSRL, quick save reload. It's not very much liked. It's like running away from a random encounter that takes like 10 seconds, whereas doing a quick save takes 5 seconds. So in theory, if you could quick save right before every single encounter, you would be saving 5 seconds per encounter. But encounters are random. So what we found out was that, hey, in this dungeon, if we walk for 7 seconds without an encounter, we save a few seconds by quick saving instead of running until we get an encounter. So that's something I'm gonna be doing. But there's a lot of people that really don't like this strategy because like it looks ridiculous. You just walk and then you take a few steps and then you quick save back to the main menu and then you continue and then you just do it over and over again, and it looks ridiculous. But if it saves time, then sure, why not?
It saves time, so like I do it, but boy oh boy, I hope you like listening to the first 6 seconds of every dungeon theme in the game, because you are going to hear it a lot.
Yes, indeed.
All right, Dash. Well, thank you very much for coming on.
Yeah,
now
thanks for having me.
you've got 5 seconds to answer. What Final Fantasy has the best soundtrack?
I guess FF4. I've only.
Okay, FF4. I definitely yeeted him out a little too quick there, but that's okay. That's another separate vote. So, as a result, we now have 10 different answers. 12 people on 10 different answers. That is very crazy. Thank you, Guan Yu, for keeping track of who's voted for what. We'll make a note of it at the end. Right. Next, we have Final Fantasy II on Pixel Remaster. We have Poor Scythe on Mog, Down on Team Choco, and Seri on Team Tonbury. With me in the call, I believe I have one of the lovely commentators for the run, Talbrick.
Yeah, hey Chris, how are you?
I'm doing very well. How are you doing?
I'm doing all right.
I'm doing all right. Okay, nice. Good to hear. So, Final Fantasy II, it has a lot of unique things going for it. Some of which were right, some of which were not so much universally loved. I'll say it like that. But among them are keywords. You want to take us through a little bit about keywords?
Yeah, so Final Fantasy II has this weird keyword system that I haven't seen in any other Final Fantasy game. But as you go and you're talking to someone, sometimes there'll be some red text, and you can learn that text. So like at the beginning you have to learn Wild Rose, and then later you can ask someone Wild Rose, and that unlocks the next story progression or more keywords. There's a couple spots where you kind of just use a keyword to learn a new keyword, to learn a new keyword, to learn a new keyword. And it's just a weird system that I guess they must have decided they don't like it, because I haven't ever seen it again.
Yeah, it's a shame, because like I do genuinely quite like it. Obviously, it's a little annoying if you miss one, haven't realized you've missed one, and then you need to go back.
Yeah,
however long it is, but
there's one spot where I basically always forget to because you want to learn your keywords at the best moment to not have to backtrack, and to where you can just mash later. And there's one spot where I always forget to learn one of the keywords, and I have to do a little bit of backtracking to make sure I have it.
Oh boy, which one is that?
It's a Dreadnought, because you talk to Princess Hilda a little bit, and then you go and talk to Minwu, and then you're supposed to go right back to Hilda to learn Dreadnought, and I always forget that one.
Okay, so FF2 Pixel Remaster. What kind of strats are there? To get through bosses, fights, that kind of thing.
Yeah, we rely pretty heavily on spells and a couple specific weapons. So there's a lot of time spent trying to track down, well, not track down, but going to and making sure you have Sleep Blade and Ancient Sword are the ones towards the beginning that we really make sure we use to curse our enemies or put them to sleep to keep them from killing us. And there's also a lot of use of warp tomes and teleport tomes, which is what we're seeing on the screen right now, to try and just, get rid of the enemies. And sometimes it doesn't work so well, like right there. You only teleport one away instead of all three. But yeah, so lots of tomes, and I'm really interested. I think all three of our runners do slightly different variations of kind of all the same stuff. Everyone has different preferences on whether or not they want to use tomes on a boss, or if they want to hit that boss with a sword over and over again. But for the most part, we're usually aiming to either put an enemy to sleep and then slash it to death, or just send that enemy to a different universe and not ever let it bother us again.
I actually love it when things like that happen, when like all of the runners do very similar things, but it's different. I really do like that kind of stuff. It's brilliant. On that note, well, not on that note, I guess on the Pixel remaster note, something I wanted to talk about. There was a new glitch found for all of the Pixel remasters. It's the case for every single one. And we got together and very quickly and went, okay, well, we won't be doing this for the relay, so it's not a thing. Essentially, we're running any percent no major glitches. But
yes,
what is this new glitch?
Yeah, so the new glitch, I'll be honest, the first I heard about it was when you guys announced that we wouldn't be using it, and I haven't looked into it a ton.
Okay.
But yeah, so it basically lets you skip some cutscenes, if I understand correctly, by like doing some quick saves and then quitting out of the game and re-entering it. But I know I've seen some people messing with it to skip opening cutscenes. A lot of these Pixel remasters have, the 4-minute plot expose opening cutscene. And so if you can skip that, that's a nice time save. But yeah, I'm interested. I know Porsyth I saw was messing around with it for Final Fantasy II, and you resized the game, Don says, my bad.
Yeah.
But I know Porsyth was messing with it for Final Fantasy II and like got plopped into a city at the start that you don't actually start in. So I'm curious to see how that develops things down the road. But yeah, I haven't looked into it a whole lot yet, personally.
All right. Do you know the most egregious use of the resize glitch in FF2? I'm going to assume not if you've already mentioned Porsyth.
I don't think so. I don't know if a lot of people have messed with it yet. There aren't that many long cutscenes in this game, I feel like, other than the very opening.
So, I guess to explain just how silly this can be, in something like FF6, you could do it at the start, and instead of being in the castle at the start in a flashback, you'll just be there, and then suddenly it'll be the banquet in the middle of the game. In FF2, on the other hand, there's this incredible speedrunner. I don't know actually if you know them. I think they're regarded as the best Final Fantasy speedrunner, and everyone agrees. They're called ChrisTenarium. And don't laugh. And turns out if you just do it during the intro cutscene, you get plopped into a completely black room. Then, if you quick save and then reload back into the game, the words "the end" are written across the screen, and you're done.
Incredible.
You're just done. It's a very, very dumb glitch. I don't understand why or how it works at all, but man, it was a glorious find.
We should have just used that in the relay. Final Fantasy II, done.
Yeah. I honestly think the most common response to finding that was, "Damn, we should do that."
Yeah. Oh, I don't know what's worse, that I don't know what's worse, that one or like in Final Fantasy 1 where you can just turn chaos into like 3 goblins in a trench coat. But
oh, I completely forgot about that one. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Okay, anyway, thank you so much.
Yeah.
It was very much a pleasure. Now,
okay, but
Oh, go on.
Before you ask me your last question, I need to preface this.
Okay.
I'm in grad school for a music degree.
Uh-huh.
And in my music theory class, I literally gave a presentation like a month ago on the development of the Final Fantasy music with Nobuo Uematsu. And this question has been so hard for me. And I just need to throw that out.
Okay, well, I appreciate that it's taken a toil on your mind. And I will give you 1.1 votes as opposed to 1.
Sounds good.
Okay, so what is the best Final Fantasy OST?
I'm going to say Final Fantasy VIII for today.
Final Fantasy VIII! Oh my goodness, you heard him! You heard him! He's got... or is at least doing a music degree, and he said 8? What did I say? Did I say I would give him 1.1 votes? I actually misspoke. I meant 11. So Final Fantasy VIII is now winning with 12 votes. And that's... good to know. Anyway, Final Fantasy 13 is next. For the teams, we have MMM on Team Mog, Higher on Team Choco, which means that 01337 is on Tonbury, and he is here with me. Hello, Zero.
Hi, Chris. How you doing?
I am doing very well. I'm doing very well. I just found out that Final Fantasy VIII is officially the best soundtrack by having 12 votes so far, so it's very exciting.
We'll see if that's still true at the end of this pre-show.
Yeah. Don't worry, I can make it so that isn't the case. Right, anyway, before I get too unhinged, let's speak about Final Fantasy 13, shall we?
Let's go.
So, something you phrased that you wanted to talk about the 2 Decept route. Would you like to take us through that?
Of course. So, when I started running this game in 2021, in Chapter 2, we do our Shroud farming for the start of, for the rest of the run. And we used to do 3 Decepts and 2 Fortizals, and that free Decept has lasted up until maybe this month, where we switched to 2 Decept. So the Decepts would be used for Penangoan, it'd be used for the Bulwarker fight in Chapter 12, and it'd be used for the runway dodges after the Bulwarker fight. And we recently stopped using it on the Bulwarker fight, or at least if we don't get a bonus. And the way the map, before this fight was really bad, it still kind of is without a Decept, but a Japanese runner by the name of Bishop started doing it in a different way that made it a little bit more viable. And when you could do the map on all the time and how it works out, farming that for a Decept costs about 48 seconds, and the fight takes about 50. So it's more or less worth it in that regard, it breaks even, but the true value is that if you get a bonus, it's like a 50-second time save now, whereas before a bonus was a 30-second time save.
Ooh.
So it just mathematically makes sense, which is cool.
Yeah.
And we've been routing around that recently. Before we had to do 2 split menus, depending on which version we got. If we had the bonus Decept, we would do a different menu before the Bulwarker, and a different menu after. And now we actually, we switched it the last 2 days. We found a different way to do it, and now Lightning's always the person that fights, regardless of how many Decepts we have, which is really cool, and the menu's now the same. So we're still doing the classic pre-relay routing changes.
Yep, there are always certain games that are a little notorious for... You chat to someone in the morning of their run, they're going on in the evening, and they're like, oh, sorry, I'm a little distracted, I'm just routing. I believe Rooster, who was here earlier for 12, is notorious for this.
Rooster is a big router.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gotta reroute before marathons. That's generally just tradition at this point.
Exactly. If you're not making us worry, then are you truly living? Clearly not. You mentioned something like 50 versus 30 seconds earlier on. Is that 20-second time save a big deal in Final Fantasy 13?
I'd say so. FF13 is interesting in that it's a long game and there's a lot of small variants, so these small bits of time don't feel like they matter that much, but at the same time they do. We get hype over every 1 second time save we fight. The times are so optimized at this point that just anything you can get is valuable. And those 20 seconds, those are 2 failed dodges worth of time save. So you now have more cushion to play with, or just 20 seconds, which is very helpful.
Alright, yeah, that's pretty cool. Now, A big, I would say, rather well-known boss in Final Fantasy 13. One that always sticks in the back of the memory every time 13 comes up is Barthandalus, of course. And you wanted to speak about Bart 3.
Sure. So Bart 3 is the third to last final boss, essentially. And on PC, the fight's not that difficult, but it can still get you. And you want to make it as consistent as possible, of course. So there's... Let's say there's a traditional way to play where you don't look at lineups and you just throw your blitzes and your damage with snow, and it works alright, but sometimes you're a little bit short and that can make the difference, and then you die, and then your run is no good, and you're sad. So we found some ways to make it better using some extra shifts. The idea is you want to line up Saz and Snow as well as you possibly can. So what you can do is after your Cold Blood, you can ready animation cancel Snow and Saz. But the problem is if you do that, Snow will be ahead of Saz. And if you just stay in aggression the whole time, by the time Saz is doing his 4th blitz, Snow will be jumping back and then is delayed after that shift into the next refresh. And everything kind of slows down a little bit and is a little bit desynced. But what we started doing not too long ago is we would shift after the first string in aggression into tireless and just let Snow do 2 punches and then shift back into aggression. And that just lines everything up again nicely. You line up Saz and Snow strings up at the 10 at the same time, and then you can ready animation cancel both of them, and it just ends up being really efficient. Gets you a bit more damage, and it's just overall very good. The other thing is the fight that relies heavily on vanilla debuffs. You need the Protective Imperil to win. And so the old way of doing this, I think it might still be the current way. I might be the only person that does this version of the fight. If you're missing one of them, or maybe even both of them, you would generally go into War and Peace after you tank Ultima, and just wait for Vanilla to get debuff, and then just sit there and heal until it's time for to tank the second Ultima, and then you tank that, and then you go on. It's essentially a 2-cycle fight, and it loses you 30 seconds. But what you could do is you could try to go with the Smart Bulb and inflict the debuffs after you tank the first Ultima, and it's a bit risky, because if you don't get them, there's a good chance you lose. But I've been working on some patterns that make that fight work. And if it works out, then you save those 30 seconds they would have lost that bad debuffs. So it's a very nice change, but it is a bit high risk, high reward sort of deal. If you don't get them, there's a very good chance you're having a very slow fight, or you're dying. So that one's a little bit more controversial. And all these little strat changes are really reliant on something you might not expect. They're reliant on Snow's Steel Guard timing, because that determines how he lines up with Saz and everyone else, and when you get the stagger. Because you don't want Snow to just go and stagger by himself before everyone's lined up and ready. So, as an example, for the normal buff fight, where you actually hit your debuffs, and you shift into Consolidation at the end of Snow's 3rd string, you want Snow to get his Steel Guard off right before he shifted to Try Disaster, so you actually wait for the Steel Guard. If you did it on his 4th string, you won't be getting a refresh, and then the lineup is better if you shift right before the end of a Steel Guard before the next one. And then if you didn't get debuffs, you want him to shift on a Steel Guard again, so he's delayed as much as possible, so Vanilla has more time to get debuffs. And you can line him up with stats properly. So it's one of those things you wouldn't ever think about, why does Snow Steel Guard timing matter, but it actually makes a humongous difference in this fight.
So, going off script a little bit, can I ask, how hyper-optimized is FF13 at this point? Because, you're talking about Steel Guard specific timings. You mentioned how Saz goes before Snow, and Snow's punched twice in the air, so you're changing up a fight because of that. That sounds really optimized. Is that the case?
I like to think so. It's one of those things where we're always out of ideas to improve it, but every now and then we find something new and we save a second or two or more. It's very optimized, but you never know how much more room there is. I want to say there's not much, but who knows what we'll find.
There's always something.
Yeah, there's always something. We changed the route again 2 days ago in a small way.
Then, coming from super optimizing that to something that I don't know how much it truly can ever be optimized, but you told me before it is something that's worked on in consistency. Dodging. You want to go into dodging?
Well, we always try to find new tech for dodge. Obviously, dodges, we want to get them. We don't want to fail them. And as times have gone down, we approach things more and more riskily. But there's a really cool new tech that we found. So in Chapter 3, well, I shouldn't say new tech, but in Chapter 3, there's this dodge we affectionately call Gandalf. It's 3 ghasts and 2 birds, and one of the ghasts just blocks this like thin pathway that you have to get into, and most of the time it's fine, but sometimes he can troll you, and it can get a little ugly. But recently, Zig had made that amazing FF13 world record video, history video. And one of the things he found while he was doing his research for that is back in the olden days, way before my time, I think it was Maelstrom actually, who went back before the like soldier fight in Chapter 3 instead of forward. And what that got you is a chance to despawn Gandalf, which is very interesting. I think Rusta and Serena were looking for despawns at some point when we discovered bridge despawns. And they never found anything. So this was like a blast from the past find where it apparently was known in like 2011 or something, and we didn't know about it until 2023, late 2022. It was a really cool find that apparently was known for 10 years.
Yeah, that's really cool. I mean, like, also, huge shout out to Zwanzig's FF13 history video. I think that's one of those where I thought I was going to watch it in one segment, and then before you know it, an hour had just like clicked before my eyes, and I'd watched the whole thing. It was a very, very good video.
I'm hearing. I was very entertained watching it, and I learned a lot too. So cool. Since I'm one of the newer runners too of 13, a lot of the community's been around for ages. I've only been here for a few years.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Now we get to the part where I ask you 5 seconds. What's your favorite Final Fantasy OST?
If I have to pick one, I'm actually gonna go with 13, but 10 is like right up there for me as well.
Okay, sick. 13. We don't have any 10 votes until that. And I can't even count it because it's like half. Oh god. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna give Final Fantasy X a pity 0.5 points because I love 10, and it's a disaster. It's fine. Foxy will say 10 when he's on later on, and if he doesn't, I'll cry. Right, moving on. We now have Crisis Core Reunion. Should get onto that. The teams are Hello Internet is on Team Mog. Goran is on Team Choco, which means that Adrian Mamba is on Team Tonbury.
Yay!
Yeah.
I made it.
Yeah.
Tonbury, let's go.
Yeah, we were chatting beforehand that you really wanted to be on Tonbury, so you got your wish. Congratulations.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been always cheering for Team Tonbury since I started to watch the release. So yeah, it's pretty nice to be in there.
An OG Tonberry fan. Oh, okay. I like it. I like it. Alright, so Crisis Core is a game that I don't know like much about at all. So you're gonna have to take me through it slowly. Let's just start with like early game strategies.
Yeah, so okay. Crisis Core has a lot of tech involved because at the early game you need to do a lot of position-wise technique. The strategies involve a lot of rhythm, a lot of specific combos, you know, and that changes once you get the high jump materia. The high jump materia, it's the game changer of the run, absolutely. And basically, that materia basically deletes everything, you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's also tech involved on the high jump. It's not like you spam high jump and that's it. But yeah, I would say the early game it's the most fun part of the run for me because you have to be careful with a lot of things. You have to be really precise. The game is not so lenient with you, and it's easy to mess up everything in the early game if you don't play carefully.
So do you have to play very well in order to be like good at this run, or do you have to be safe, or do you have to be a mixture of both?
That's a good question. I mean, there's always it's always good to be safe, you know. But the skill level, it's not so hard to at least to learn the run, but it's hard to masterize, you know. When you are seeking or reaching for top level times, etc., you absolutely need to get good at the game, and that involves a lot of specific stuff. The moveset of the enemies, the hitboxes, etc.
So it's like it's easy enough to get into, but there is a high skill ceiling.
Yeah, exactly. That is.
Brilliant. All right. Well, we've spoken about what you do in the early game now. What happens like the more you go on? You know, you've got to the late game. What are we now doing?
Yeah. So for the early game, we use an accessory that it's called Curse Ring. That prevents. In this game, there's reels spinning in all the fights. That reels gives us level ups for Zack. Also gives up material level ups, which is super important. So at the beginning of the game with the cursor ring, the spills are not, the reels are not spinning. But once we remove the cursor ring, we start to level up, we start to get material levels. That's a lot of RNG, wise. So yeah, it's a combination of good luck, as much good luck you have, and also your skill, you know.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what it turns to the run in the mid game to the late game.
That's very cool. So, what are like the strategies you use to kill things, like at the end?
Yeah. So we use especially we use the battle stance move. Battle stance move. It's a new feature in the Crisis Core Reunion that didn't exist on the original game. In that stance, Zack gets less damage. The defense is pretty high, and also buffs or all of materials, all the skills. So yeah, pretty much it's battle stance into high jump. That's more or less what we want to do once we get the high jump. But again, there's a lot of timings with the bosses. There's a lot of patterns you need to know. There's a lot of movesets, and it's not that easy that no, high jump spam and that is.
Yeah, I'll play the video again because it's very short, but like it is worth watching. The first time I saw this, I was shocked. You just jump and they're dead, and the combat start and they're dead. You have so much damage. It is insane.
Yeah. So we get 3 accessories: the diamond gloves, the power wrist, and also another power wrist. 2 power wrists. So we are buffing our attack like plus 30. So once we get to Junon and we get the battle stance, our attack it's basically insane. That's that's the secret behind. And yeah, there's also I mean, in order to get the power wrist, we also need to get good luck because it's a drop that relies on a percentage. It's a 70%. If we don't get the power wrist, we need to lose 1 minute after in a telephone to get another power wrist. So yeah, that's also RNG.
Is there a lot of RNG and randomness like that throughout the run? Like, does it ever get worse than a minute? Or is a minute a big deal in Crisis Core?
It's a big deal because it's a short run, and yeah, there's a lot of stuff happening. I mean, for example, if you get good luck and you get 4 high jump levels early on, that's going to carry your run. And it doesn't matter if you don't play that good. You have 4 level of high jump, and that's super huge.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. Well, yeah. I guess it makes sense when a run is really short. A minute is suddenly like, oh, cool. I'm going for a really good time, and my run is dead. Right.
Yeah. So for example, world record green or top level grind, and 1 minute it's almost a reset.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. Well, thank you. Gracias por estar aquí. Lo agradezco.
Thank you. Gracias.
Before you leave, ask you the same question I've asked everyone. You've got 5 seconds. What is your favorite Final Fantasy soundtrack?
7 Remake.
7 Remake, specifically. Yeah, I mean, it's another unique vote. And currently 13 is winning with 3 votes. Wow. I expected this to be a lot closer than it was. Well, for other games anyway. Alright, next on the list, my favourite Final Fantasy, but as decided last year, not the best one, unfortunately. Still my favourite. Final Fantasy VI Pixel Remaster. We have Muchihara on Team Mog. We have Lion Masashi on Choco, which means that Dine is on Team Tonberry. And with me, I have the lovely B-Dude.
Hey Chris, how's it going?
It's going alright. How's it going with you?
You just had to put me with that guy, eh?
I had to put you with that guy, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'll get over it, I guess.
Sure, you'll live. So, Final Fantasy VI. This is the first time you've done Pixel Remaster. It's always been SNES in some way, shape, or form. It's gone through a lot of optimizations over the last year. Would you care to take us through those?
Yeah, so, I mean, when it first came out, we had like a day 1 race where we basically followed the any percent glitch list from the SNES route, which kind of worked, but not really. We noticed there was a lot of big differences. One of the big things being auto battle and everything kind of dealing with auto battle, basically making everything go 50% faster. And since the enemies go just as fast as you do, whereas in the SNES, the battle speed only affected the enemies, this means they get a whole lot more turns, which means we get to see a lot of the really nasty stuff, which also doesn't really matter that much because it seems like Square doesn't care about boss scripting anymore. So, like, Atmo Weapon, instead of throwing the nasty stuff on, like, turn 4, turn 5, they can just start throwing it on, like, turn 2, and this changes the dynamics of the fight dramatically. Sometimes you can do stuff about it, sometimes you can't. And that's why God created Quick Save. So, after we did the any percent SNES glitchless route, noticing that that's not very good anymore, we eventually ended up coming up with a Dragoon Ed route, which worked out pretty well. Basically, we just made him get leveled up underneath Bismarck, he gets a whole bunch of strength, he gets to jump in the air with some Dragoon boots, and he does a whole bunch of damage. Problem with that was, you can only jump on one enemy at a time. So then we kind of went back to, well, what can we do? We can't manipulate the auction house at all, so we've spent way too much time, trying to get Zone Seek for that extra magic level up. And I'm talking, we've seen Lion Musashi go in there 24 times, I think, and losing 15 minutes or some junk like that.
Oh boy.
Yeah, no, it's not a good time. So we ended up going with Maduin, which you get by default. You get half the magic level up off of it, so we have to do a little extra leveling, which that is also kind of getting rerouted now, actually, anyways. So it's going to be interesting to see what people actually run with, because we are currently doing a little bit more rerouting stuff, which basically just makes Kefka's Tower a little bit scarier, but you get to grind less.
And that's not something you'll be doing for the relay, right? You'll be being really safe, everyone, right? B-Dude, why are you pausing?
We're going to be doing a bunch of leveling
B-Dude,
here,
why are you pausing?
I can't speak. I'm just a commentator, bro. I'm just gonna sit back and watch the magic happen.
Alright, I'm gonna need to get Dine on the call pretty quick. Alright, anyway, sorry, go on.
So, with the Pixel remasters, we don't get step route at all. So this means grinds are very inconsistent. because you don't know what you're really going to get. So we end up grinding, instead of in the forest where we used to do a whole bunch of reach frogs and a whole bunch of mantidillas, because it was nice consistent damage, with the auto battling and how fast everything moves, that ended up being really slow, and because we don't have the magic to really kill everything in one shot, bad things can happen. So we ended up going to the desert right beside it, because you can get either slagworms or you can get cactuars. Slagworms are great for experience, cactuars are great for money and losing time, because they give absolutely no experience, and it's basically a 50-50 on what you're gonna get.
Do you need money in this route? Like, are they helpful up until a certain point, or are they just like, oh great, a cactuar, brilliant, I lost time?
If you see like 2, you're like, alright, that's fine. Especially if they're really early, because they just kind of help you learn a little bit of magic. If you see them later on, usually you'll get... It seems like if you see none, or you'll see like 6 in a row, and you're like, alright game, I just want to play. Please, just let me play.
Can you do anything with the money if you get so much, or does it just get to the point where you run away from them?
You can buy extra holy rods, but you mostly just have them to be like, I have money, I may as well have them at a certain point. It's, like I said, it's better for safety, so if you're worried about a safe run, let's hope for a lot of cactuars, because hey, more money, more safety, haha.
I mean, I can practically hear the enthusiasm from here.
It's great, I promise. Everyone loves the grind. Everyone loves to just see what happens in there. Other than that, like I said, auto battle kind of... If you're not using auto battle, you're basically losing time. So that makes it a lot scarier, because you generate ATB while animations are going off. This is the only pixel remaster where that happens. So this causes a couple of issues with the game, where you'll get like a bit of a battle queue clog, and you'll notice that the game just kind of like sits there for upwards of like 3-4 seconds of the game just basically trying to figure out whose turn it's supposed to be. Meanwhile, everything else is getting ATB during that. So a good example is, before we get smoke bombs, running away is really fun when you get 4 or 5 enemies. Because while one of them's attacking you, if you're not ATB waiting them, other guys are getting ATB. And what happens once they get ATB while the other things are attacking? They're attacking some more. So you can get into a nice cycle of, I don't get to run because everything just constantly attacks me. So you have to kind of try and go on that nice line of, I don't want to not auto battle, but I also don't want to just die.
So would you say that auto battling in Pixel Remaster is the way to go?
It dictates the entire run in every single one, is how I would word it. The 50% battle speed increase is it's too good. The biggest saves that you'll see in this run, because realistically, this route is slower than what we do in any percent SNES, but because we have a sprint button, which means you get to run 2 times as fast, which means it also stacks with sprint shoes, so you're actually moving 4 times as fast as your regular walk speed. And then you also have instant text, so that goes by really fast. And then you get this auto battle feature on top of it. I think even though we have to watch the 4-minute opening cutscene, this run catches up by Magitech armors in Figaro Castle, so like 21 minutes in.
On another note, I think it would be fair to say that Pixel Remaster had a bit like of a slow start in terms of people running it, but it's very much coming to its own since then. It's got a lot more active.
Yeah, so there was probably last year, there was like a good almost 6 months where like no one was really running it. The world record was kind of stuck around 426-ish. And then Muchika came through out of nowhere and was like, oh, hey, here's a 420, by the way. And everyone's like, whoa, wait, hang on. What happened here? That's when Relay Race was actually coming up really close, because within the past month, it's gone from 420 down to 411 with 3 different world record holders, being Muchiha, Dainu Atari, and Shigeru. And that's been, I think, 5 different world records in that time. It's been a ride, and probably 2 massive reroutes and a whole bunch of optimizations amongst all of them. It's been a very busy time.
So, is everyone getting faster and faster times a result of routing? Is a result of everyone slowly getting used to Pixel Remaster and playing better and better? Or is it like a combination of the both?
Combination of some optimizations, combination of a little bit of rerouting stuff, which there's a few of them where you'll look at them and be like, it saves more time, but, and then it might lose you a little bit more time somewhere else. And then there's just the luck factor is so hard in this run. Basically from start to finish. Just because of not just how many encounters you get, what encounters you get, how fast did you get to run away from them, did you die on any of these boss fights, did you have to watch a whole bunch of long animations. Tiers alone can still be either a 10.5-minute fight or like a 15-minute fight. There's so many different things that can happen. Like tier 3 here is it's trolly. It's always trolly, and every single run it's trolly.
So, is there more of a variance in tiers compared to SNES then? Or is it still as crazy as always?
It's still as crazy. I would say it's hard to tell because with the auto battle, mistakes and bad things that happen can kind of get brushed under the rug a little bit more, where it doesn't feel as noticeable because you can just kind of rip right through everything. So it's probably worse, but because you can speed it up that 50%, it doesn't feel as bad.
But there still is like a chunk of RNG happening at any given one time.
Oh yeah, for sure. Every single boss fight in Kefka's Tower can still just kill you because it wants to kill you. Especially since we rock with a single Celeste for the 3 big fights of Inferno, Guardian, and Poltergeist. So Inferno, you're hoping he casts a Thunder spell on you to heal you up, otherwise you'll just die. Guardian, you kind of hope. I got hit with a stone spell yesterday, which confuses you, and then you're like, oh, okay, well, guess I might just die here. And then Poltergeist, we did find out Poltergeist, if he casts Stop on you, normally he follows up with the Blaster, which is an instant death. But apparently in this game, they changed it to where the Blaster doesn't actually hit if you're alone. So you just get stopped there and you just sit there for a little bit. There's some weird scripting things like that. We call those PR moments.
Of course you do. Why wouldn't you? Alright, well, thank you. Thank you very much, B-Dude, for showing up. I very much appreciate it. Obviously, last question. What's your favorite Final Fantasy soundtrack? What's the best one? You've got 5 seconds.
I'm gonna go with 6. Has to be a runner-up of CC, though.
He went for Final Fantasy VI, which takes 13 to 3 votes, and 8, 6, and 14 to 2 votes. Oh boy. It's getting a bit tight at the top. I mean, I don't want to influence anyone, but there can be some tactical voting here. Speaking of a place where I do not expect any tactical voting whatsoever, Final Fantasy X-2. Teams. We have Chocomungle on Team Mog. Somewhat conversely. We have Backform on Team Choco, and we have D Sharper on Team Tonberry. And here, I have one of the glorious commentators, Mel.
Hi, Chris.
Hello there, how's it going?
I'm good. I'm so excited to talk to you about your favorite game today.
It is my favorite game. It's well known. My favorite. You know what the crazy thing is? I don't mind it, Tenty. I quite like it. I enjoy it.
You got good taste, man. That's all that means.
Thank you. So, speaking of 10-2, something that gets, I don't know, not talked about all that much, I think we're probably about to find out why, but it's Saru skip.
Oh yeah, Isaru skip.
Flies under the radar a little bit. Why is that?
It does. It's a really hard skip. It's basically frame perfect. I feel like I don't know much about Final Fantasy X, but I feel like a lot of their skips are just set up the same way, where you have to get frame perfect, a dialogue trigger with an NPC with the cutscene that you're about to skip. Is that right? Do you know anything about that, Chris?
Do I know anything about 10? Yeah, I know. I know a few things. Yeah, it's very similar. It's not necessarily frame perfect, but yeah, you try and enter 2 sets of
Yeah.
dialogue.
So this one's, I don't know, frame pixel perfect, whatever their term is,
Yeah.
but it's pretty difficult. And to get it set up takes probably about anywhere from, I don't know, 10 seconds if you're lucky and you're really not trying too hard. But if you do want to set it up pretty well, it'll probably take anywhere from 10 to 15 seconds. And it'll skip this whole scene with Usaru right here that we're looking at. And it'll save you anywhere from like 20 to 30 seconds, depending on how quickly you set it up. So it's really difficult. And just because of the time you waste setting it up, usually a lot of runners don't go for it. But I mean, you can just YOLO it and kind of get a feel for where the spot is with practice and just kind of wing it. And if you get it, it's great. And if not, you move on and you die somewhere else in the game. Likely, so.
And boy, will you, yes. The crazy thing is about Isaru skip is, for the most part, when someone asks about it, I will tell them I probably wouldn't necessarily bother with it. It's very difficult, it's very precise. You probably won't get it. And then seemingly there's a 10-2 runner called Chokochi who took that very personally and now just always goes for it. But not only goes for it, sometimes gets it as well.
Yeah, the Sheriff of 10-2 has definitely inspired me to go for Usaru skip and all of us. So big shout outs to Choco. I mean, I just go for it almost every time now after seeing her just go up there, flip her Yuna around to try to get the skip, and then she just skips Usaru and she's on her way. So
I really hope for the relay that someone at least tries it. You don't have to get it, but you just gotta try it. Just
you all
it.
better try for it, or you're gonna hear it from me.
So remember, you'll go down in legend if you hit it. So now we'll talk about the more well-known parts of Final Fantasy X-2.
Oh gosh.
Let's not reveal our hand too early. So the bosses, the difficulty, all of the RNG, the final gauntlet. That is
yeah, so
10-2.
a lot of these bosses, if not every single one, you basically have a chance of dying. But there's 3 bosses that's notorious for just killing runs near the end of the run, right at the beginning of chapter 5. And it starts with Shiva. Shiva's not too bad, but she can be, of course. Then it goes with sisters. Everyone hates the sisters. If you like the sisters, there's something wrong with you. And then it goes to Anima. Anima can be difficult, but I can talk in more detail about each 3 of the fights and kind of what you're looking for, if that's helpful. So yeah, Shiva, basically the main strategy that you're doing near the end of the game, and also I'll talk about Pain because she's doing the same thing throughout the whole game. She's basically like a glass cannon, so she's using major magic damage to take out the enemies as fast as possible. Near end game though, she's more support for Yuna and Riku, because Yuna and Riku will do Karen, which they do basically, I forget what is it, Kamari's like self-destruct, same thing, where they do 9999 damage. But there's still more damage to be done to the enemies, so that's where Pain comes in to do the chip damage. So, starting with Shiva, you basically need 5 Firagas from Pain, and then you need to use Riku with the Karen. The thing is, Shiva is super, super fast. Even with slow ATB, she's still pretty quick. And if she kills Pain, then you gotta spend time getting Pain back up because she has so low HP because she's a glass cannon that it's very easy for her to do. She can also, I think, just stop your character. So, I mean, if you have Pain dead and then a character stopped, it can be difficult to get everything back in line to kill her. It can either just lose a lot of time or you can die, which is the story of every X-2. So if you make it through Shiva, good job. That's great. You go on to Sisters, and Sisters is mostly just about good ATB, like a lot of these fights. But I mean, if you have bad ATB, the Sisters are basically going to get a million turns off. They're also very quick, even though if you're on slow ATB, and they can just kill Pain, and then they can kill another character, and it's really hard to get your party stabilized after that. So yeah, you go in that fight just hoping for great ATB. You got to take out 3 different sisters, so that makes it more difficult because you're dealing with 3 enemies instead of 1. And I mean, you can lose anywhere from like 1 to 5 minutes in this fight. Like, it's super, super variable. Yeah, this is a hard one to get through. And just for context, Back has world record in this game, and he's on team. Is he team Choco? Let's go Back. But he has world record, and he lost 2 minutes on Sisters alone. So a sub 340 is definitely possible if you don't get, completely screwed over by some of these fights.
Yeah, with 10-2, we absolutely go into the. I think the first time I heard it is FF9 runners talking about it, where you talk about a theoretically possible time. So,
yeah, right.
like how you sit there and be like, yeah, you could get like a sub 820 in FF9 PSX. You're not going to, but you
we talk about it like it's
theoretically-
possible, but we all know it's never gonna happen.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
probably.
Right. Yeah, 10-2 very much falls under that as well. Like, you even mentioned just how fast the Maga Sisters are. I've never quite looked into the back end of this game, but even the amount of turns the Maga Sisters get are random. You start with slow ATB, you could get really lucky and only 2 turns could go off. They could also just get 8. They could also just Posado
really
you
random.
down and kill you from full health. Like, you don't know.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, that's why you ATB wait with Pain, and she has instant cast. So basically, you're just minimizing their ATB as much as possible. And if Pain dies, that's why it's so devastating, because there's nothing stopping their ATBs from flowing at that point. And you're like, oh, well, here we go. You just gotta pray and hope you live.
Yep.
So you get past Sisters. Oh, we're on to something here. This is great. This run's going good, right? Then you gotta fight Anima. So Anima is, again, need water chip damage from Pain and a couple Karens from Yuna and Riku. So the main threat in this fight is Anima can cast Pain, which will silence you, and I forget what it's called, but it basically makes it so you can't you can't do any abilities or actions, and you have to change your dress sphere to basically make that happen.
Chaos, I think.
It does damage as well. So basically, you don't want that to hit Pain, because you need Pain to be buffed up her magic, because she uses focus to buff her magic up, and it also negates that magic buff as well. So it's just all around really, really bad. So what you want to do is use Water Gus to get Anima down to a certain amount of HP, and then you can take Anima out with Yuna and Riku. But if she uses Pain on Pain during that, that just delays the time. And also, what you're really trying to do is kill Anima before it has a move called off. It has a move go off called Oblivion. Oblivion just does a massive amount of damage. If you don't have Pain and Sentinel, which basically just makes it so she evades all physical attacks, she will just completely die. But the thing about that is Anima does Oblivion after a certain amount of time after you start doing damage to it, so you really got to manage your ATB again with Pain and her instant cast. So if anything's happening with Pain and she's bleeding ATB, the chances are you are not going to skip Oblivion, and then you got to do a backup to make sure she doesn't get hurt by Oblivion, and it just bleeds a ton and ton of time. So another fun thing is, as you're doing the last cast on Anima with Pain, and you've already sent in Yuna and Riku to Karen, so basically you need Yuna and Riku to blow up and Pain to kill off Anima in this time that their ATBs are filling. Well, Anima can cast Pain on Pain and make it so she can't cast her Water Gu and then just completely kill you, because at that point only Pain's alive, because Yuna and Riku self-destruct themselves, and then Anima just completely take you out. So yeah, there's a lot of different situations and occurrences that can happen that can just absolutely kill you. It's basically the summary of that.
10-2 is the ultimate, it's not over until the last split has been split, right? Like, you can't start counting your chickens or anything like that, because there are so many bosses that could just kill you, even if you play really well. Like, in this Anima fight we're playing out, I believe this ends in Oblivion. Well, you sent it to me, so like, I think it ends in Oblivion. But, like, even at the start, you just get so unlucky. Pain gets Pain, and she goes down to 15 HP, and I think you slowly realize, like, Pain has 15 HP, and I can't heal her in time. I have to wait for the poison tick to go off for her to die and then Phoenix down that. Like, it's pretty wild. I think there may have been some.
Yeah, I didn't hear
you're
anything
here.
you just said, Chris, for the past like 2 minutes, but I'm here.
Okay, don't worry about it. Like, hang on. So this anima fight ends well. Anima dies, and then we all move on with our lives. And I think that run went on to world record, right?
Sure.
Yes, brilliant. Okay, well, thank you so much for being here. Gotta ask you before you leave. I have a distinct feeling I know what you're gonna say, but 5 seconds. What's the best Final Fantasy soundtrack?
Tactics.
Tactics. Final Fantasy Tactics. Okay. All right. That one threw me off a little bit. I'll be honest, I'd already put the point in 10-2. All right. Moving on then. Final Fantasy 1 for the NES, no less. We have Mr. Zwanzig on Team Mog, Shane Zell on Choco, and Kane on Team Tonbury. And I believe in the call with me right now, I have one Mr. Zwanzig.
Good evening, Chris.
Good evening. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I've been really enjoying the pre-show.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to hear that you're enjoying it. And hopefully you will now get to contribute to it as well.
Yeah.
So, this is the first time we're doing NES for FF1. Not done it before. How is NES very different? What does it do that the other versions of FF1 do not?
Yeah, so the game in general is really different, obviously, because it's so much older. And I'm really happy that we're doing this one because we've had so many relays and we've never done NES. I'm not even that much of an FF1 runner, but I've been really pulling for this version to be in just for the historical value. But it doesn't have that many runners relative to something like PSP or recently Pixel Remaster. But yeah, it's obviously a much older game, so there's a lot more jank. Well, I say that. In some ways it's actually less jank than something like PSP that has glitches that let you get really overpowered equipment really early on. An NES run, actually, for how glitchy Final Fantasy 1 is a pretty straightforward playthrough that doesn't really abuse many glitches. We kind of have to work around some of the kind of programming oversights, but it's a pretty straight playthrough in terms of what you can actually do. I mean, of course, there's the stairs glitch thing or whatever, but we're not doing that. That's like a 5-minute run or whatever.
Yeah. We've let Final Fantasy 1 NES into the relay. You've got 5 minutes. Enjoy it, guys.
Yeah. And technically what we're doing is the no RNG manip category. We're still manipping what encounters we get, but we're not manipping anything in battles themselves, which you can do with certain buffer setups. But we're not doing that. So what are we doing then? Well, one interesting thing is that this is apparently, and I could be wrong on this, but I think I've been told that this is the only version of the FF1 speedrun that actually gets the class upgrade. So if you're unfamiliar with the game, you get to pick a team of whichever classes you want out of 6 different ones at the start of the game, and then sometime during mid-game, there's an opportunity to do an optional dungeon to upgrade your classes into stronger ones, and the other versions of the game just don't really need to do that, and it's just faster to beat the game without that. But you're seeing it right now on screen. This is the Castle of Ordeals, and we're going through that dungeon in this version because it really lets us become way more powerful, lets us equip much better equipment, is the main thing. Like the best swords in the game are really important in the last dungeon, and it's only the knights that can equip some of those. So it's a fairly short dungeon. It's actually really rough if you don't do step manipulation, but we can get through with a couple of relatively harmless encounters in the speedrun.
Okay, so you guys are all on steps, right?
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
Okay, what are the chances that you get off steps? Could that be a concern in this run?
It's not really that difficult to stay on steps in this game. I mean, again, I'm used to something like FF5, where there's a couple of reasons why I think it's much easier in this. One, you can't run, so it's a lot harder to make mistakes when you're not moving at ridiculous speeds. But in addition to that, even if you mess up something and get off step route, there are a bunch of times during the run where we will actually do hard resets, which completely resets the encounter RNG. This is baked into the route, so it's really easy to just sync back up at those parts.
Right, so even if you ever get off at some point, you reset and then you're okay again.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. You can just revert to those points, and if something happens like you die in a dungeon, it's most of the time actually we're just going to set back up to whatever point we are in the step manip, which depending on which dungeon it is. I think if it happens in Ordeals, it's actually quite bad, and you have to burn off like 10 encounters or something to get back on the right manip. But yeah.
For the most part, it's fine then, because I've absolutely found in running a lot of different Final Fantasies that there are two kinds of step counts. There's Final Fantasy V, where, as the Mutsuki song goes, took one extra step, now my run's dead. Right? Like, we've seen plenty that is the case. It's not even an exaggeration. And then there's something like, an FF6, which is, or this, which is infinitely more lenient. So it's good to know that it's on the lenient side.
In that sense, it definitely is.
Are there any quirks to the to the NES version?
Yeah, I mean, so obviously this has step route, which the other versions don't have. Other than that, I think I sent you a video that was a glorious 2 or 3 minutes of just item shopping.
Yep, that's on screen. That's on screen.
Yep, there it is. Yeah, this is how you buy items in Final Fantasy I. You buy them one at a time, and we actually need a lot of them because tents are used to aid in the step manipulation, because what we can do is we can use a tent on the overworld and then get into an encounter and immediately soft reset, and that will essentially just skip us past the encounter in the RNG table, and in that way we avoid most fights on the overworld.
So in that case, how many do you end up buying? You say a fair few. Are we talking like max amounts of 99 or?
Tents and cabins combined is something like 40 throughout the run, I think. And then a bunch of pure potions, which are for curing poison, which can occur in encounters sometimes, and poison is something you really don't want to stick around with. And then the big thing is heal potions, which we need a lot of. I think, I don't know how many you end up buying in an average run, but it's probably, on the order of 200 or more. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, boy.
And we literally make sure to go into the final dungeon with 99 of them, which you usually don't end up using all of those, but you might, so you might as well just buy 99.
And you have to buy them one at a time.
Yep.
Does anyone... I assume once you hit 99, the shopkeeper goes, yeah,
Yeah,
all right. Anyway,
he
mate,
does.
like
Yeah.
on your bike, you've got enough for. Is anyone
Yes.
insane enough to count to like save the time
That's a
of not getting that
good
message?
question. That's a good question. I've watched Shane's runs. Shane's really good at this game. He's got the world record in this category, and I don't think he counts his heal potions so that he saves that 1 second or whatever it is. So okay, according to him, some people do. I definitely don't. No.
That is peak optimization right there. When you're trying to eke out every single second, you will count individual purchases up to 99. Oh boy. So on that note, I know Shane was doing a very different route, but in his words, as he said in mine no less, he says, "I am now a sheep," and he's changed the route that everyone else is doing. Are there any differences between your routes now?
It's kind of unfair for him to even call himself a sheep because he also made the route that all of us are now doing anyway. Shane, if you don't know, he does so much different FF1 stuff. He's made like probably literally dozens of routes for this game. He's kind of nuts. But so the route that he was originally going to do was actually going to have a different party setup where he would you'll see that all of us are going to have one dead thief in the last slot because it just gives the other characters more experience points and we don't get that much out of the fourth character. He was actually going to do a 4-man run, or at least it would be like partially 4 people, but then some people would be dead for parts. It was really complicated, and I barely saw any of his runs of that route. But so that didn't end up happening. At this point, we're doing very similar routes, but Shane is going to do some slightly more complicated stuff. Probably the main thing at this point is he's going to try to grind the eye in the ice cave, which is essentially the boss of that area. It actually has really low HP and doesn't really do much in the way of HP damage, but it has insta-kill moves that you have to be somewhat wary of. There's some getting around it, like if characters have high enough HP, they can't be hit by the insta-kill, and he buys softs to deal with the petrification. But depending on how that grind goes, he can either like do basically all of his level grinding there, or have to back it up with the grind that Kane and I are going to be doing by default, which is Agama's in the volcano. Which is a little bit slower in the optimal case, but is a lot more stable.
Yeah, I like the word stable and safe, and words like that. They make me happy.
Right, yeah. I mean, the reason Shane even swapped from the route he was going to do was because he just could not get a single good run with the route he was doing. He was just like, okay, this is just a little bit too risky.
All right, brilliant.
But yeah, he's still going to do a little bit of spicy different stuff.
There is something I did want to talk about. We are probably a little over schedule, so we have to keep this short. But it's FF1, and apparently we weren't scheduled to talk about it, but I want to. Can Chaos be a nightmare in this version?
Yeah. The short answer is yes. For those who watched the relay last year, in the Pixel remaster, I believe one team got stuck for something on the order of like 15-20 minutes. On that fight. The fight isn't nearly as bad in this version. You're definitely favored to win the fight with the route that we're doing. The problem is if you do die, it's just immediately you lose 20 minutes because you have to do the entire dungeon over and over again. Like FF3 is really infamous for this, for having a really long dungeon at the end with no saves, but FF1 is basically the same thing. It's just casually probably not as difficult. Which is why it isn't as known for that. But yeah, it's still really bad if a team dies to Chaos, and I'd say it's probably likely that at least one team will. Or maybe not necessarily to Chaos, but maybe to Kraken 2 or something, who's also deep into the same dungeon and really scary. If all of us manage to get through the whole run without any party wipes, I would be surprised. Let's put it that way. Because even with a relatively safe marathon route, it's still FF1. It can be really, really rough.
FF1 is just going to occasionally FF1. I get it. Alright, well, thank you very much, Wansik, for coming on and chatting. Same question I've asked everyone. Got 5 seconds and then I'll eat you out. What's the best Final Fantasy OST?
I was actually going to abstain because they're all just too good and I couldn't choose, but now I'm just going to vote strategically and say 6.
6. Yes! Okay, nice. So that means that 6 is tied for the win, and we only have 2 people left. Ooh, it's getting a little close. It's getting a little close. Alrighty then. Okay, next. Penultimately, we have Final Fantasy X. Teams are Hiroshige on Team Mog, Choco is Foxy Jira, and then Vermilion rounds out Tonberry. In call, I believe we do have one Foxy Jira.
You have disappointed me greatly.
I've disappointed you. Did you want to be in Tonberry?
Of course.
Yeah, everyone wants to be in Tonberry, but there's only one place for it, okay?
What's up, Chris?
Yeah, how's it going? Is it going all right?
I'm so tired. Oh my god.
Oh god,
no
right?
idea.
Yeah, you came back from. You know, we'll talk about this later. All right.
Yes. Sorry, nothing about my personal life here now.
Anyway,
but go ahead.
So FF10 this year, we're doing RNG fix. What does that mean?
So I guess I don't even know what I'm going to be looking at here as I watch 10 seconds behind on stream. But RNG fix, if anybody is really familiar with the Final Fantasy X HD run, is simply you cannot manip anything within the run, essentially. So we usually, typically, for the most part, thanks to one Mr. Gray Fox 1996, have the ability to basically track all of the encounters, drops, etc. within the run itself. And thanks to RNG fix, we get rid of all of that. So it essentially turns it into kind of not a blind run, but a like clean, pure run that you're just going to have a great time running through and really hoping that you don't get ambushed.
You've also credited who made the program to manip. Would you like to credit who made the RNG fix program as well?
Actually don't know who made it.
I'll give you a clue. It's the same person who made the program to manip.
That's what I thought. Okay, you threw me a curveball, making it the same answer that I was expecting. But yeah, so I mean, honestly, the mod itself was a lot of fun. If you're not running it constantly, simply because the biggest thing is that it's really nice to know things like when you're going to get ambushed, especially now with the route changes that have come through in the past couple months, essentially making ambushes way more scary than they were back in the day. So, and also more frequent, I would say. So it's quite the difference, but everything kind of falls into place.
Yeah, there is a copy pasta among several FF10 runners chats now, which is true RNG fix or words to that effect, which is, do you like the safety of knowing when ambushes are gonna come and all of this? Well, say goodbye to that, because you know nothing now.
It's so scary, but yeah.
So the ambushes, are there any places you can die? Are there any places that will lose you time as a result of just not knowing what's coming?
Yeah, so the biggest one I would say is Thunder Plains, simply because due to Thunder Plains essentially, it's at least the front half is scary because you don't have as much HP with your entire party. You don't have initiative with Auron, and you can easily wipe with Thundaras just from a bunch of random enemies, essentially, just coming at you hard. The second part isn't as bad because that's where you get Titus's, the lightning, what's it called? Oh my god. The armor, essentially, that prevents all lightning damage. So,
Yellow Shield.
Yellow Shield, thank you. Yeah, so the Yellow Shield prevents all lightning damage. So the second half of Thunder Plains is fine, but it's really just you're spending so much more time healing up characters at the end of the day than you really should. And also, there's a bit of this play of how you keep your party well healed up, because you can have Waka and Kimari, but you spend most of the run where Titus has base HP of 520, so he's below Kimari and Waka. That makes him a better target for wolves, which are in Mihen High Road and also in Moonflow. So it's good to keep him maxed out on HP, and then also Waka or Kimari slightly below that if you can, to make sure that he's always the target, or either of them are the target rather than Titus.
So why is Titus at 520 HP like a bigger target for wolves?
Yeah, so the biggest thing would be Terra Skip, or as some people know, Mushroom Rock Road Skip. So that was something that came up probably about 3 months ago, I think. And so instead of going through Mushroom Rock Road, fighting Sinspawn Gui, going through all that business, now we kind of pulled something similar to like Classico Skip and other skips throughout the other games, where now you can actually push yourself through I think it's like a set of 3 different zones, essentially, to push yourself straight into what would be where you would run once you're done with Jose, or once you're done with Gui and Jose, those sorts of things, and be able to just push yourself through the Classico Skip portion of the screen, thanks to the same person actually helps you skip Classico Skip. It's not super, I would say it's very hard. The lineup itself can be very finicky, and then also if you're using turbo like I will be, it can be kind of hard to kind of time how you want to talk to the character, so or at least the NPC. So talking to the NPC can be a little bit of a chore, and then sometimes based off of where you are situated, like I guess pixel wise, you can either get pushed straight back, a little back into the right, or just completely all over off into right field. Essentially, that's a very American term, but you just like basically out of nowhere, and then you have to retry it. And so there's a lot that can go wrong just based off of very small little things at the end of the day. But it skips the entirety of Mushroom Rock Road and Gui, so it's a huge time save. Even in cutscene remover, it's like 5+ minutes easily. So
yeah, and as a result of doing that, we don't get Sentry, which is what stopped ambushes later on in the run.
Exactly.
So everything is now, as a result, a little more terrifying. And like the reason Titus is at base HP now is because we don't have to do any grinds to kill Gui. You'd have to kill a lot of things early game and then make it through. But Gui's no longer that wall. Sorry, go on.
Yeah, no, you're fine. Just like you said, the Gui's no longer that wall. And then I think the funny thing that came out of all of this is that you just don't need to level for Gui. Like if you just take Gui out of the equation, nothing changes. Like you maybe get like 1 or 2 extra spheres here and there, but like that's the funny part, is you really don't need Gui at the end of the day to get through all of this. So it's basically just ripping out a part of the run that was just a headache for everybody else, which is it's great.
Yeah. Yeah, you have to invest so early in Gui, and then like realistically the only time Titus needs those stats are for like Seymour, essentially, which is like halfway through the run, and then you can just, but by then you have access to mid-game boss AP, and they already give like so much as is. Are there any other fights that change as a result of Terra Skip?
Yeah, so I think one that was being shown earlier is the Extractor fight. I guess with the main route that folks are doing now, the biggest thing is that you are at base HP, but at this point, because we we don't level Titus as we mentioned, we pick up the Stunning Steel from Owaka and Luca, which allows us to, very similar to the No Sphere Grid run that was shown last year, allows you to slow the Extractor and then essentially just kind of hammer out damage as needed with cheers. And well, the nice thing I would say with the RNG fix essentially is that it kind of normalizes a lot of the RNG that you would get. So actually getting a Lightning Steel off Extractor, which is kind of the main thing that you hit for at the end of the day, just for damage purposes pre-Terra Skip, is something that actually shows up quite often. So it's much nicer at the end of the day to have to actually to have that kind of rush, I would say. But yeah, Extractor's the big one. Slowing it, and the pain of it all is even though I think it's like a 50% chance to slow. You can spend several turns attacking with the Stunning Steel, and it kind of just devolves from there at the end of the day. So it's a lot more luck based than the run initially would be, I would say.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes you hit first try and you already know what to do then, and then sometimes second try you probably know what to do by then. By third it's a little time to get you. I had a run the other day that was 8th try, and
Yeah.
By then you are so far off the rails, you're hoping for it to end. And
Just end me, please.
Yeah, maybe Extractor will crit Titus and I can just reset. Guilt-free, right?
It'd be great. Just please, game, let me off this ride. I want to be done. And I think that's the biggest thing of the game now is that you're kind of just letting the game toy with you a lot more. And while it is fun to watch and it's scary, but at the same time, it's just, there's so much that can happen that I think that's kind of the fun part of it too, for at least somebody watching, is that it's not kind of calculated, that sort of thing. It's you get to see runners really react real time, right, to everything they need to be doing and what sort of adjustments need to be made, whether it be how many spheres you collected, whether power or speed, like who died recently that you need to heal, and like how you kind of just really show your game knowledge at the end of the day to kind of expand from there.
Yeah, exactly. And and after a while, you just know all of this stuff anyway.
Yeah.
So when it happens, it's not, oh god, how am I going to adapt to this? You just roll your eyes. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
We're doing this again.
Here we go.
Sick.
Yeah, it's not the you don't have Mr. Titan's guide up, and then when something goes wrong, you just go check the guide. It's
Yeah.
a lot more organic, I would say, at the end of the day.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Foxy, for coming on. Now,
thanks for having me.
Same question I've asked everyone. You've got 5 seconds to answer. What's the best Final Fantasy soundtrack?
Okay, 3 seconds. What do you think my answer is?
10.
Okay, it's 7.
7. You know what? That's not as surprising. I guess if there was, I think that's could have been as likely. There has been half a vote for 10 so far, and it's maybe one of my more copium moments. Apparently it's not as revered among speedrunners as I had otherwise hoped. Anyway, last but certainly not least, we have Final Fantasy 13-2 to round us up. We have Pharaoh on Team Mog, Zero Scar on Team Choco, and Foxy Salsado on Team Tonbury. And I believe with us we have one Pharaoh.
Yes, I am here.
Hello there. I hope you're doing okay.
Kinda. Not
kinda?
really.
Okay.
But I'm. It looks like it's working now. So.
Yeah. Okay, you know, I'll take a kinda. You know, that's okay. I'll take kinda. So,
you did not make my day better by putting me on Mog, but okay, fine, I'll do it.
All right, so I'll have a word with Seraph and see if he changes it, and then he can be the one to tell you no, and he'll look like the bad guy. Okay, brilliant. So, Final Fantasy 13.
Sounds good.
Final Fantasy 13-2. I think there's obviously a lot of RNG associated with 13-2, but I think a rather large part of it is monster farming. You want to take me through monster farming?
Yeah, so 13-2 is a Pokemon game disguised as a Final Fantasy game. After a certain point of the plot, you gain the ability to recruit monsters. So every time you kill a monster, there's a certain chance of it turning into crystal, and then you can use it as your third party member. There are 2 monsters that we must capture in order to be able to complete the run as its fastest iteration. One of them is Necton. The first one is Necton. Necton is very hard to spawn because it is considered a rare spawn where it appears. And it's really annoying because it spawns before, and it's really common on that place, but you can't capture it at that point, so you have to catch it on the place where it's rare. And yeah, the hard part about Necton is actually capturing it, but because Necton dies to 1 hit, and they spawn in groups of 2, 3, or 4, that's actually not that hard, because when you get into a monster fight, you can actually retry it as many times as you want to, and it will always respawn. So you can attempt as many times as you can. So you can attempt it as many times as you want until you actually get it. As long as you leave at least 1 monster and the fight doesn't end, and then you can always just retry. The second monster is Kahongas, which looks like a big bird, and it's also a big jerk. Gahongas, it's easy to spawn because it is a common enemy, but they spawn in groups of 1 Gahongas, 1 Gandayaks, and 2 Gahongas and 1 Gandayaks, which is already bad because you're guaranteed no to die on that fight, and 1 Gahongas and 2 Gandayaks is just annoying, and Gahongas itself is a 20% chance of being captured, but it doesn't die to 1 hit like the Necton does. So it takes significantly longer for you to be killed and then for you to have to retry. Necton and Gahongas farming, along with random encounters just being random encounters, is the 2 hardest reset points of the run. When you have a solid Necton and then you have a solid Gahongas, then you can actually say, okay, we have a run going. Before you get to Gahongas, then just nod.
So, what? Obviously, I feel like this is the real answer to the question I'm about to ask is infinite. You can lose as much time and you can always forever get unlucky.
Yes.
But what is the average amount of time that you would expect to lose doing this?
For Necton, 2 minutes. If you get the spawn. If you don't get the spawn, you can lose anywhere between 2 to 5. And shoutouts to Leonis, is my bro, because he lost 15 minutes at our ESA race trying to find a Necton and then capture it.
Oh boy, that
Every time someone tells me, no, 13-2 is completely fine. It's like, no, you have no idea how bad this can get.
Just wag your finger, sorry, I know better.
Yes.
Oh my... Okay, well, we'll move on from RNG then, and we'll move on to good things and positive things about the run.
Yes.
I think it was you who told me that... either you or someone else told me that 13-2 is just a platform to show how godly Chi-Chu is.
Yes, this is correct. So anyone who has been on this Discord knows that I'm Team Chi-Chu in my heart. And so let me roll back a little bit before I explain. At the beginning of the run, Chi-Chu is a monster that you don't actually have to capture it. You throw a Moogle and then it shows up on your inventory. It's complicated. Anyway, before you get to Chi-Chu, because Chi-Chu is it's just over the halfway point of the run that you actually get to use it. Before you get to that, you are using the human character, Sarah and Noel, to deal most of the damage by combo-offering spells, which is just spells that deal a lot of damage. But they by themselves aren't enough to be able to actually defeat the last bosses of the game, and that's where Chi-Chu comes in. Chi-Chu is a commando. People who don't know 13, commando is basically the role that deals non-elemental physical and magic damage. Chi-Chu is a physical damage dealer who has who has extremely high attack and a very fast attack animation. So, and not only that, he gets all of the good commando passives on his natural tree, and these aren't this is nice, this is good to have. No, it's straight up the best passives you could ever ask for on a commando role. He has blindside, doubles damage whenever he's not the target, and he almost never is the target. He has power chain, which just changes puts the chain duration to max with the flick of the finger. He has Bravery and Faith Feeder, which are 2 attacks that deal 5 times the damage of a normal attack, and also Steel, Bravery, and Faith, which double the damage that he's going to deal on consequent attacks. Chi-Chu is just the most broken thing ever to appear on a Final Fantasy game, and it just looks like this beach ball of murder that is adorable. And you have to experience the power of Chi-Chu to be able to fall in love with it. It's great.
You really could see just how powerful Choo-Choo is in that clip there, where Sarah spends half the fight dead. And Choo-Choo's just at, like, Pacos's feet, just bonking its head into it over and over again, doing 20k
and
damage.
they just die. Choo-Choo bonks its head on things and they just die. It's glorious.
Oh, Choo-Choo is... I love Choo-Choo so much. The minute I saw it for the first time in a run, I was like, man, this little lad is broken. This is brilliant.
Yes, it is. It really is.
And last but not least, we can talk about, and I know you love this section, so try not to praise it too much, but Academia 500?
Oh boy. Final Fantasy 13 2 starts with 2 humans being top tier mages, then it rolls with Choo-Choo being the god slaying cutest critter, and it finishes on a platformer. Yes. This is not this is a Pokemon. This is a Final Fantasy game disguised as a Pokemon game that ends up a Mario game on the very last dungeon. This is not fun. The game was not ever meant to be a platformer. The camera angles are just kind of weird. The platforms themselves are on steady cycles, but because of the way that enemy encounters work, they might be able to catch you during a jump and you just fall down and you have to start all over again.
No.
Another fun thing about Academia 500 is that there is an early cycle that you can get to by being able to get to a platform before it actually cycles up. And that jump saves like a minute and a half, I want to say, but you need to be very lucky with encounters, and you also can't fail the jump itself, which is harder than it looks.
So,
yeah.
Would you say this is a... I mean, I was going to ask you, would you say this is a consistent bit, but judging from everything you've said, no.
No, this game is not consistent. This game is the antithesis of consistent.
Just anything that ends in a 2 in this relay. It's not consistent.
Yes.
Final Fantasy 2,
No.
10-2, 13-2.
And 10-2.
Yeah.
No, it's just not. And another fun thing that I've noticed a lot of people say, oh yeah, our game has been a lot of route changes, different routes, different strategies, and whatever. Like, 13-2 has been static for the past 2 years. Nothing has ever changed. The times have gotten better just because people have gotten more lucky.
Well, you know, sometimes you need time to get luckier and better. And I'll assume it's a vague combination of both, probably.
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Pharaoh.
No problem.
You, depending on what you pick here, have the deciding vote for what wins.
Yeah, I noticed, but my heart has an answer and my brain has another. I've been conflicted over this for a while now.
Look, 13 and 6 both sit on 3 votes at the top. I know you're a 13 person.
Yes.
But, you know, you and Dying get on pretty well as well. So just bear that in mind.
The answer is not 6.
Alright, well, I've tried to sway it with nepotism and veiled threats, but unfortunately Farah did not feel for it. Alright.
So, let me say a very poetic answer.
Okay.
So, my heart says 13-2, but I have to pick 13, so it wins.
Final Fantasy 13 is the best Final Fantasy soundtrack. You've heard it here first, everyone. Thank you, Pharaoh.
No problem.
The best. I think I'm a little upset at just how little. 10 got half a vote because of a pity vote. I'm vaguely upset and crying deep inside, but it's fine. I can put on my mask and inhale some of that glorious copium. At least 6 did well. At least 6 did well. So, thank you so much to all of the runners and commentators alike for showing up and giving their time to talk about their games. I hope everyone here had fun. I sure did. We're now in proper relay mode. It's happening. I can feel it. I think I also spy one Seraph in call with me.
I might have snuck in for the last little minute there. But you're right, relay is 5 days away, which is crazy. Coming up. But yeah, great job on all the interviews. Big thanks to Chris, give him the love in the chat. Just had to chat for like almost 4 hours straight.
Yeah.
I'm sure you're exhausted.
No comment. No comment.
Did you throw down a vote on your little poll?
Chat very much told me that would not be allowed, and I don't get a vote. So I have to just accept that 13 is the best Final Fantasy soundtrack and go on from there.
You know what? I think it's a good pick.
Yeah, honestly, you could do a lot worse. You could do a lot worse than 13. A lot worse than 13. So
yeah, I mean, someone voted for 4, so
yeah. Hey, 4 has an absolute banger boss theme. I will not stand for this. All right.
Anyway, yes, relay is coming up. Here's all the runners. Please, screenshot this if you want. Save it. There's also the spreadsheet main sort of document. It's pinned in the chat. If you want to open that, share that around. I hope you're looking forward to it. I sure am. We'll probably tweet out these teams and stuff as well. But yeah, other than that, looking forward to Friday. Thank you to everyone that showed up for this pre-show, and thanks to all the runners that will be running and commentary. It's been a blast.
Yeah, massive thanks to everyone who watched. Again, massive thanks again for all of the runners and commentators and so on who showed up to chat about their games. I genuinely enjoyed everyone I spoke to today. Had a very good and fun time. Now, full steam ahead for the relay, right?
Full steam ahead. 5 days. Mark your calendars. This has been great. I've learned a lot from all these people coming on and talking about the games. It's been great.
Yeah, absolutely. I will remember the disc giving an extra click to know whether Seisengrat has spawned in. I will remember that one.
That's a good one.
So yeah, relay starts on Friday at 10 Eastern, 4 Central European. And all of those times you can see on screen. Should we be on our merry way?
Yeah, that's up. See you guys on Friday.
See you guys on Friday. Thank you everybody.